before I forget, I'm probably going to forget this. Let's, it's still 25-20 subject, but let's just break it off thought and just do a separate little thing on the 25-20. It's a separate thought. So, Brother Patrick did 1831, 1833. Remember that?
31. You said 31, you didn't say much about 32.
Okay. So I put the 1831, and this was the formalization of the message. Remember that?
Yeah.
And there are many important points about that day, sorry, that event, that waymark. And he took you back 220 years?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
And this takes you to the year?
220 years later.
1611?
Yeah, that one.
And 1611
Is the when they finished the King James Bible.
King James Bible was
The 7-year period before
That's
that.
right. That was the end of the 7 years.
Then he took you to 1996. You did that,
Yes,
yeah?
he did.
You've done that already. 220,
Yes.
1776.
Correct.
Remember all of that?
I should.
And so people remember.
Yes.
So what was 1770? I know it's a Declaration of Independence, but what's prophetically?
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you.
25 years before persecution ceased, is it? No.
That's a different thread. That's a different argument, a different thought.
Independence declarations.
That's what
Oh,
Brother
sorry.
said. But he said, what's that got to do with anything? So yeah, so let me just remind you of that then. What it addresses. That wasn't the point I was going to bring up. But I'm not.
While we're there.
That means between
So,
1833
in 1776, they're going to declare independence from the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And there's something ugly about the United Kingdom.
Yes.
Only one. Is that a few years back, in the time period of Henry VIII,
Yeah.
England was Catholic. And then they broke away because of certain issues. It's not simplistic that he wanted to remarry. There were political issues as well. There were financial issues as well. It's all about money most of the time.
Yes.
So he had reasons to leave. And then when they left, he was the king of the state. And then he decided also to be the head of the church. So you have a church-state relationship. And this follows through all the way. In fact, we still have it now. Our Queen is the head of the head of state and the head of the church, theoretically. So one of the things that the Americans are making a position against when they're declaring independence is all this nonsense about state-sponsored churches. They're not going to deal with that anymore. So what they're making the statement here is that church and state are separated. There's a wall that separates the two of them.
Yes, that's right.
Okay? And so the question we want to ask ourselves is, what does 220 mean?
Oh, he told us.
Restoration.
And that would be
Restoration.
restoration.
That's right.
Oh, well done, you guys.
I think we said that at the same time.
You're supposed to say things.
And he probably gave you some examples, but if we're happy that it's restoration, you can see that, yeah?
Yeah.
So, one that troubles people that I like it is, if you go to John chapter 2 verse 20, and it talks about the destruction of the temple. This is the destruction of Herod's temple, or Zerubbabel's temple. And Christ says, you destroy the temple, and I'm going to do what? Rebuild it in 3 days. So if you rebuild something, you're going to have to restore it.
Yeah.
So right in John chapter 2:20, you have the number 220, just in the coding of the chapter and verse, and it deals with the restoration of the temple.
Oh, it just blows your mind. Nothing.
But there are more sophisticated ones than that. So 220 is restoration. So everybody says that the 2300 days is a true prophecy, and the 2520 is false. Yeah, that's what most people teach. Now, here we are. I've rubbed it out. Let me just put that back in. Here's Zedekiah, and what's going to happen to God's people?
Into captivity.
They're going to be divided into.
They're going to go. They're already divided back here.
Okay.
Zedekiah.
Sorry.
They're going into.
Oh, captivity. Yeah.
Into where though?
Babylon.
They're going into Babylon.
Yes.
Then they're going to come out of Babylon.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a progressive extraction process. How many steps?
3.
3 steps. It's always 3 steps because this is a symbol that God is going to restore His people. It's the everlasting gospel.
Yeah.
And this is who? Persian kings.
Oh.
Cyrus.
Yes.
Cyrus.
Darius.
Darius.
And Artaxerxes.
Good. And Artaxerxes is the last one.
Yes.
We've got a bit more information. That's the last one.
And there's 2 lots in between, 4 lots.
And we're going to go here, and this is going to pick up what time prophecy?
7 weeks.
2300.
Yeah.
2300 day prophecy. Yeah. Okay. And it's going to take you to what date?
1844.
1844. And that's number 3.
Yes.
And you've got number 2 and number 1. So can we see that pattern?
Yeah.
It begins at number 3 and it ends at number 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And number 1, what's happened to God's people? Where were they before this? They were in Babylon, the Dark Ages, and the papacy received a deadly wound, and they're going to come out of Babylon. Because this is the church of Sardis. This is Sardis, and Sardis means to come out. So they're coming out of Babylon at the first step. They're coming out of Babylon at the first step. Cyrus says, come out of Babylon. So you're going to come out of Babylon progressively, and by the time you get to the 3rd, you're about done. Yeah? And then it's going to mark the 2300 days. By the time you get from the 1st, 2nd and 3rd step, and you got to 1844, Christ is where?
In
The most holy place. He's moved apartments, and you've come to the last step, and everything has been sorted out. Yeah? All the Y's have been sorted out, and all the 40s. Everything's finished. Yeah? So everything has come back to normality, and if he's in the Day of Atonement, most holy place, how long does that last in the Jewish economy? How many days is it?
1 day.
1 day. And it's, so here we are, is the year, and here's the Day of Atonement at the very end of this issue. So this is the last. And what's going to happen on the next day? No, this is just sanctuary system. You've gone 364 days. You start again. Okay, so you start again. And what you're going to do when you start again, you're going to start polluting the sanctuary again.
Yeah.
So if this was pollution, and this is pollution, this is here cleanup. Yeah. And another way to say clean up is you're going to restore or reset the sanctuary.
Yes.
So here's restoration.
Right.
Because that's what the Day of Atonement means. It means to restore or set it correct or cleanse. Cleanse the sanctuary, restore it back to pristine condition. So if this is the cleansing of the sanctuary and it's the restoration, it's the Day of Atonement, then you know this here is restoration. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Cleansing is restoration. Now, the principle that we like using is I am the Alpha.
And Omega.
Okay, so this is the end of the prophecy, so this is what?
The Omega.
And
And
the-
it's also.
And so that must be
The alpha.
Yeah.
The alpha. And the alpha and the omega are the same. So what's the omega?
The restore.
So what must the alpha be? So this must be a restore as well. Okay, so the 2300 days begins with the restoration and it ends with the restoration. So if I were to ask you, let's come up with a title for the 2300 days, what would be the title for it?
Restoration.
Restoration. So we've got restoration. And here's our 2520. We haven't given the dates and things, but we're just taking this as a concept. Here's Hoshea. He's going to go where?
To captivity.
Into Babylon, into captivity. And they're going to be wandering in Babylon to the end of the earth. Okay, because they were scattered. And so,
Can we use restoration for 2320 because we've already used it for the 220?
I'm going to explain, yeah, that's what I want to show. So, here's the 2520, and the theme of that is scattering.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's do a timeline.
Okay.
We're kind of jumping a bit. This was a kind of just an extra thought. So let's get these two prophecies to end at the same time period, 1844. And my license for doing that without proving it is right here. 2300 days, 1843. 2520, 1840. They end at the same point. Okay, so that's what I want to do. It's not 43. I'm going to make it 44 because we don't. There was a mistake.
Yeah.
So here's 1844, and here's the 2300, and here's the 2520. And this theme of the 2300 days is restore, and the theme of this is scatter. So let's just do a quick math calculation. If you subtract those, you get 220. So what you know is that when you see the relationship between the 2520 and the 2300 days, is that there's a relationship between the scattering and this restoration, or this theme that God is going to restore and sort out the problem. So there's this punishment, and 220 years later begins the restoration process. So you get the beginning of this scattering, and then exactly on time, because it's the 220 is the restoration. And there are a number of examples to 220. It's not just this John 220. Well, in fact, I probably gave you one. The easiest one to go is into the book of Genesis, when you deal with the flood. You go into Ezra chapter 7 and 8, I told you there. So this 220 is going to bring you to restoration. So there's a structural relationship between these two prophecies, connected by this concept of restoration. So to me, that's quite a good argument to show you that there is some truthfulness in the 2520. It's connected directly to 2300 days, but you have to be able to see what 220 is. You have to be able to see that first. Okay, trouble that one. Yeah.
What I'd like to know is why would they start at 677?
So yeah, that's what we're going to go to now.
That's where we're going.
Yeah. So we're in the year 742 BC. And we can get 742 BC from Ussher, from Ussher's chronology. It's a fairly well-established date, although, as I said, a number of people don't accept it. And it says within 65 years, Ephraim, this is Ephraim, shall no longer be a people. So let's clock 65 years into the future. We've got 742. 742, we're going to take away 65 years. So that's 3, 7, 7, 6. So 677 is going to come from the connection of the 65-year time prophecy from the year that we're dealing with, the story of Ahaz. So here we have 677, and here we have 742. Let me put it. 742. So that's where we get the 677 from. It's from this 65-year time prophecy. Now you may have noticed, or you may not have, that this is the line of what? This is the line of Judah. And this is the line of, I'll put Ephraim, but it's Israel. And the prophecy is about Ephraim, not about Judah. Okay, but I've put a 65-year time prophecy and I've connected it to Judah. So what we need to do is we need to work out how you get from 742, where Ahaz is ruling, and we can connect that up and tie it with Pekah, and then we can start tracking through chronology all the way to Hoshea. And the Bible gives us a lot of information about how to track that history. So when Hoshea is reigning in the north, Ahaz has already passed away, and now you've come to the time of his son, who is Hezekiah. Everybody's heard of Hezekiah. Yeah, Hezekiah's the one who had a damaged slave and he got some things on him. Just a story about Hezekiah, by the way. If the Lord tells you to do something, it's always best to do it. And he didn't. You know, the Lord says, you're going to die, put your house in order, and he says, no, I don't want to die. So he got extra years, and you know what the end result of his extra years was? A son. It was a son. And you know who his son was?
Manasseh.
His son was Manasseh.
Yeah.
And Manasseh was the worst king out of everybody
But,
put together. Sorry?
but he came back to the Lord after he'd been nose ringed and everything from the
Amen.
Babylon. Yeah.
But even though he came back,
Yeah.
the damage had already been done.
Yeah.
It's too late.
Yeah.
Just to make this point,
Yeah.
by the time you come to Manasseh, and we would take Manasseh out, and what we'd be doing is history. We'd take him out and put him into the future, into our own history. So if I just did this, take my line out here, and I'm going to put Manasseh here. And this is us, in our time period here. So here's Manasseh. He got taken to Babylon, as you say, he got restored, but it's too late. By the time you come to Manasseh in our history, whenever that is, we're not going to study that now, but whenever you get to Manasseh, it's too late. By the time you hit this waymark, the fate of the church is already sealed. It's irreversible. You take that from that history there. So we're at 65 years, but we've only tracked the story of Judah, which is not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be tracking the history of Hoshea. So you can go into the book of Kings and Chronicles, and you can work out the history that's going on with Hoshea. So before Hoshea is on the throne, Assyria. Remember back here, Ahaz was supposed to rely upon the Lord to help him out, and he doesn't, but the Lord still graciously prevents them from totally being annihilated. He allows Ahaz to stay on the throne, and his son, and his son, and his son, and he goes on. They didn't let that person Tabeel get onto the throne, but prevented that from happening, but they're going to get punished. And what Ahaz is going to do, he's going to get support from who?
Assyria.
Assyria.
Oh, I thought it was Syria.
Because they're getting help from Syria.
That's right.
And King of the North, remember? So they're going to get help from Assyria. So Assyria is going to come and sort these people out. But when they sort these people out, they're actually going to say, no, we actually want to deal with you as well. And so it never works out well. So Assyria starts getting involved in all of this story. And when they deal with this group, they become a vassal state. which means they're under subjection. They're paying
Tribute.
tribute, yeah. They're paying their tribute to the Assyrians so that they can remain a people. So they're getting taxed heavily. And so this begins to happen from Pekah onwards, all the way through Hoshea. By the time you get to Hoshea, Hoshea says, I've had enough of paying all this money out, and we want to stop. But you can't stop paying your master unless you've got someone who's going to help you. And this is the king of the... And who do you think Hoshea is going to go to for help?
King of the North.
King of the South. No, the king of the North is the one who's his master. He says, I want some help. I want someone to help me to deal with the king of the North. So he's going to go to the king of the South. The king of the South is Egypt. So he's going to go to Egypt and say, let's cut a deal, Egypt. I'll be your friend, you be my friend, and you help me deal with the king of the North. The Egyptians always hate the Babylonians and the Assyrians. They're sworn enemies.
So this is different from Syria because
This is not Syria. Assyria is not Syria. Totally different nation, different geography, different place. This is in the land of Shinar.
The beginnings of Babylon.
Syria and Syria are not the same place. Syria is this kind of little place, Damascus. If you look at Damascus, that's Syria.
Sennacherib. Sennacherib or Sennacherib?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's from Syria. Yeah.
So that's Syria, but Assyria is different. Assyria is in the land of Shinar. Which
Syria
is,
and Iraq, I think today. Syria and Iraq.
So this is the land between the Euphrates and the Tigris. Yeah, and Shinar actually means the land between two rivers, by definition, that's what it actually means. So they're going to go to the Assyrians, ask for help, and once the Assyrians get on the scene, they're not going to leave, because the pickings are too good. So they're under the thumb of Assyria all this way through, and Hoshea says, I've had enough, paying all this tribute, let's make a deal with the Egyptians. So the Egyptians say, we'll help you, but the Assyrians are too strong. And the Assyrians go and sort the Egyptians out, and they go running back home. And now the Assyrians are going to punish Hoshea for his insolence. And they're going to come and say, we need to teach you a lesson not to do this again. But Hoshea, no matter what he wants to do now, to sort of say sorry, the Assyrians are saying, we don't care about your sorries anymore. You've gone too far. Now we're just going to destroy your nation. So now what's going to happen is that they're going to destroy Hoshea and all of his nation. Let me just tell you one more thing. Let's go to... We're in Isaiah 7, remember? So, we're not going to read anything in Isaiah 7, but we're in Isaiah 7. And if we were to go to Isaiah 7, and you read from Isaiah 7, and you just carry on reading, and reading, and reading, chapter after chapter, all that's being dealt with in the next chapters, the next 10 chapters, the next into 20 chapters forward, is Isaiah is just telling you what's about to happen over and over again. He's going to give lots and lots of prophetic information about all the things that are going to be happening. And then we get, if you go 20 chapters ahead, you'd be in Isaiah 27. And then we get to Isaiah 28. So now we're in Isaiah 28. And Isaiah 28, you've heard us use a couple of times in our presentation. So Isaiah 28 is an important chapter. But what I want us to see is Isaiah 7 is here in Ahaz, and Isaiah 28 is given at the same time. All of those next 21 chapters are all the flow of essentially kind of like a singular prophecy that's just given out, churning chapter after chapter out. And then you get to Isaiah 28, and it says this, woe to the crown of pride, to the drunkards of Ephraim. So who's that dealing with?
Ephraim, that's the north.
Okay, so it's not. Hoshea isn't even king yet.
Oh, okay, so.
Because we're here in Ahaz.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but Isaiah's down here, and he's making a pronouncement upon the northern tribes, Ephraim. Okay, so he says, woe to the crown of pride, to the drunkards of Ephraim, whose glorious beauty is a fading flower, which are on the head of the fat valleys of them that are overcome with wine. Behold, the Lord had a mighty and strong one which as the tempest of hail and the destroying storm, as a flood of mighty waters overflowing, shall cast down to the earth with the hand. It says in verse 2, we'll read the verse 2 again, behold, the Lord hath a mighty and strong one. So there's a mighty, strong one. Okay, we're here. This is a prediction. And the question is, who is the mighty, strong one that Isaiah is talking about? It's Assyria. He's saying, you drunkards of Ephraim, don't worry. You carry on your bad behaviour, because I've got someone to sort you out. And the person who's going to sort you out are the Assyrians. And they know that. They're already under subjection to Assyria, and they're about to go into rebellion against Assyria, because they're totally confused about, we say in the UK, you've lost the plot.
Yeah.
These people have seriously lost the plot. They think they're going to make war against the Assyrians and win, because they've just got this strange doctrine, because they're drunk with this wine. We'll skip all the verses down, and then I want to go to...
That wouldn't be Syrian wine, would it? Like from the church?
Babylonian wine.
Yeah.
I want to go to verse 14. Okay, so we're in Jerusalem. Isaiah is making this prediction about what's going to happen in Ephraim. And these are the good people and these are the bad ones. And all the people in Jerusalem are saying, haha, we're okay, because these people are just going to get beaten up and destroyed. I'm not saying they've read his prophecy, but this is the attitude that they have. It's them and us. And they know the Assyrians are coming after them. They see them amassing on their borders. They know what's about to happen. This is just prior to this destruction. And they can see the writing on the wall. And they're saying, teach them a lesson, these wicked idolaters. So Isaiah's got a word to say to them now. So now he's going to turn his tongue and he's going to deal with his own people. Because he said in verse 14, wherefore hear the word of the Lord, ye scornful men that rule this people which is in Jerusalem. So now he's talking to Ahaz and his clan. Remember, you haven't got to Hezekiah. Was Hezekiah a good or bad king?
Good.
Good. So this isn't the scornful men here. This is before Hezekiah. During this time period, over here, between these two kings, between the father and the son, and he's not only a bad king, but all of his court is just wicked. They're just the scornful men in the plural. Then verse 15 says, and the reason they're scornful is this, because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we in agreement, when the overflowing scourge shall pass through. So now we've got the overflowing scourge. So the question is, what is the overflowing scourge?
That's the Sunday law, isn't
Right?
I heard Jeff say it was the Sunday law once.
But the Sunday law is about 3,000 years in the future.
Yeah.
So it's not the
So
Sunday
we're
law.
talking literally, yeah.
Assyria.
Babylon isn't even here on the scene yet.
So it's Assyria.
This is Assyria. So here we have the overflowing scourge is Assyria, and it says this, it says, because you have said, when, we're reading the verse 15, when the Assyrians shall pass through Ephraim, it shall not, they shall not, the Assyrians shall not what? Come unto us. So when the Assyrians deal with the mess in Ephraim, they're not going to come our way.
That's what they say.
And were they right?
Yeah, they were right.
And the point is, they were right, because when they come and deal with Hoshea, they leave Judah alone. And this is what's happened. They become, after that event, when they see that happen, they become really confident that they're invincible, they're untouchable, nothing can go wrong, because they're one with God. So verse 15 it says, wherefore the scornful men shall pass through, it shall not come unto us. For we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have we hid ourselves. So there's much more we could say about this. And then it talks about the foundation stone, the building of Zion. There's a lot of things that we could talk about this. They've made a covenant or a deal. The men in Jerusalem have made a deal. Let's look at it in verse 18. They made a deal with death. And he says, the deal that you've made isn't going to work because you've told death. And who is death, by the way? In this story, who's death? The Assyrians. They're the ones who are going to bring death to you. And they say, but now death is obviously no killing. It's not real, the symbol of death. They've made, what Isaiah is doing, he's getting death as a concept, like when you die, and he's personified it. So he's turned it into a parable, and he says, you made a deal with death. And the deal was this: when you come and kill people, you're not going to come and kill us, are you? And death said, I won't come and touch you, it's all okay. But it was a covenant based upon lies. This deal that you made was like, death is lying to you, so you're going to die. And don't trust what death is teaching you. So here we go. We've tracked through history. We've gone through this major prophecy. It's like 21 chapters. It goes on and on. It doesn't stop in chapter 20. It goes on, where Isaiah is just telling the people what's about to happen. And you get to Isaiah 28, which is one of the famous chapters that we use. And he says, we're going to deal with this. And don't worry, because you're going to get dealt with as well. And part of the lie is that when Hoshea gets dealt with, Judah's not going to get dealt with at the same time. And so it gives them confidence that their agreement with death and hell actually is really going to go through. So you can, as I say, you can go through the chronology and check this, and you get to the year 723. So you get to the year 723, and Hoshea's got taken down, and this is Ephraim, which is northern Israel. And there's many, many places in northern Israel. And there's a place called Samaria. It's a district, and it's the capital city of Samaria is also called Samaria. So what's going to happen is the Assyrians are going to come to the city of Samaria, besiege it, and bring it down and destroy it. And all of that's all done and dusted by the year 723. What's happened is, they've come and taken Hoshea, taken him off the throne. You take the king, you take the nation. They take their spoil, and they basically go back home. So all the poor people in the land are all going to remain. They'll all just carry on doing their things. So, if we do a quick calculation between here, 742 and 723, you get to 9, 1, 19. So you've got 19 years here between 742 and 723. Does that make sense? And then we do 65 years, take away 19, and that's 6, and that's 4. So we've broken this 65-year prophecy into two segments, 19 and 46. That would okay? So the prophecy is given in 742, and it says within 65 years, these people are going to be taken down, so they're no longer a people. Now, you can define that you're no longer a people or a nation in a couple of ways. One of them is if you take down the king. Take the king down, you're no longer a nation, in the eyes of the world. And that happens in 19 years' time, and it's in agreement with the prophecy. It says within 65 years. But Assyria haven't done with Ephraim. They've got a lot more to deal with, because they took the king, they took the capital, they took all the important men with them, but they still left the poor. They left those poor people behind, weren't really interested in them. And they're going to come back a second time, because they haven't done with this nation. This nation is going to get wiped, like the Bible says. It says, I'm going to wipe you like a man wipes a dish, properly clean and turn you upside down. And when they took Hoshea down in 723, they hadn't done the job properly. They hadn't really wiped this dish totally clean. So they're going to come back for a second swipe. And when they come back, they're going to come back in the year 677. When they come back then, what they do now, they take every single person that's in this part of the land, and they're all going to get taken back to Assyria. And they're going to repopulate the land with Assyrians. So this is true genocide, as we define it today. They're just going to strip the land of the natives and repopulate it with another group of people. But when they come the second time here, their eyes are not just on Samaria because they've already taken all the goods. But the Assyrians also know about the wealth of these people. Because you know the story between this history and this history is Hezekiah. And Hezekiah's got a wound on his leg, and when he gets healed, God's going to give him a sign that the sun's going to stop. And then the Babylonians are going to come on the scene. We call them Babylonians, but they're Assyrians. They're going to come on the scene, and they're going to say, what happened? And he's not going to tell them about God. What's he going to do? He's going to brag. So they know this person is, in English we say they're loaded. These people are rich, easy pickings. So when they come the second time, they haven't forgotten what they found in Jerusalem, all that wealth. So they want to come and take it now. But in the meantime, Hezekiah has died, and his son Manasseh is on the throne now. So here's Manasseh on the throne. And when they come the second time, they're going to take all those people, but now they want to come for the wealth that's in Jerusalem. And that's what's driving them south. So they're going to come and they're going to take the king. So when they take this king, the king gets sent back into Babylon, and this covenant with death that the scornful men had begins to be fulfilled. But someone said, I think one of my sisters said earlier, that Manasseh gets restored. So he's going to get punished, and then he's going to get restored. Okay, so there's this restoration of Manasseh. He gets restored, and then the line of kings are going to continue. But once he got restored, even though he's saved as an individual, the whole nation is going to be destroyed because of his sins were so bad. He actually killed Isaiah. Chopped him in half. You know that story. Chopped him in half. Sorry? Now, this story of Manasseh, Ellen White makes a comment on this. And when she talks about the story of Manasseh, this punishment and restoration, she says that he was a type. And she doesn't use the word type, she uses the word earnest. Yeah. Now, in Ellen White's dictionary or time period, an earnest was, you could use it as a type, or it would be a payment, or what we might call now a down payment or a deposit. Yeah. Now, a deposit is this. So here's a house, and the house costs this much money, and you want to buy the house, and the person says, okay, buy the house, but I need some kind of guarantee that you're going to pay for it. So what you do is you pay this much up front, which we call the deposit, and this deposit, what is it? It's a guarantee of what? You're going to pay the rest.
Yeah.
And this was money. And what's this? Money. So they're the same thing. It's a type. And it's a promise, a guarantee. It's a deposit. These are just synonymous terms with what an earnest is. When she calls it an earnest. So what's happening here is Manasseh gets taken to Babylon. So if Manasseh gets taken to Babylon, it's a guarantee of what? A guarantee that God's people now are going to go into Babylon. But he gets restored. So it's a guarantee that God's people are going to get restored. So you see in the life of Manasseh this earnest or type of this getting taken into Babylon and being restored. Or what we might call the scattering and the gathering. Or restoring. So as you go along through all this history here, we got to the Dark Ages, didn't we? The 1260. We spoke about 1260. In the 1260, what happens to God's people? Where did they go? I was just going to say the wilderness. But yeah, they go to the let me just do that one then. Okay, so I said, where do they go? And my sister said the wilderness, Revelation 12. So, where is the wilderness?
Out there.
It's northern Italy.
You know,
Europe.
even in Europe.
Okay, so we've got lots of different answers, and the question, the answer is, the answer is, it's not a place.
Okay.
So the wilderness is not a place, but it's a time period.
Okay.
When you realise it's a time period, then you begin to, you're able to deal with this at a really nice level. When you say that the wilderness, and it's true, the wilderness isn't a place, it's a time period or an experience that you go through. Because we had the United States, we had the Alps, but there are many, many places. We've got the United Kingdom. King James Bible is produced here. People are being protected. It's everywhere. In fact, it's nowhere, because it's not a place. It's an experience that's given to God's people over a period of time. And so they're scattered here. They're taken essentially into Babylon. They're captive in Babylon, in her dungeons and prisons, etc. And then what happens in 1798, when the papacy dies? God's people are going to do what? In Sardis, they're going to come out. So they were scattered and they were restored or gathered. So you see this theme all the way along. God's people today, symbolically, spiritually, are in captivity. We've got all the doctrines of Babylon, life and flourishing in our church, except we're not Babylon, because we don't have Sunday sacredness or the state of the dead one. We're still holding firm, because that puts you into Babylon. So we're not Babylon, but we've got many of her doctrines, many of her thoughts, her concepts, the way we operate. We might prefer to call that apostate Protestantism. We don't like Catholicism. And this symbolic activity, we're going to escape from that, aren't we? God's people are going to be free, and they're going to have a fight with the king of the north, and they're going to win. Daniel 11, verse 45. They're going to have a fight on the glorious holy mountain, and King of the North is going to come to his end right there. So this whole theme that you go through is your story of scattering and gathering. Go to the time of Christ. Are they captive in Babylon? They certainly are, aren't they? Because the Romans have subjugated the land, but they're still free. In fact, they claim that they're not even under Roman control, really. They're not in bondage to it. They just kind of got some working relationship with them. But they're captive, and they're going to be made free, because the Christian church is going to come, and Christ says, I came to set you free. But it's a different kind of freedom than they're expecting. So what I'm trying to point out is, in these various histories, you get this recurring theme of scattering and gathering all the way through. This one, it's not, it's just scattered all the way to the end of the earth. So we've got the 65-year time prophecy, we've dealt with the history of Hosea, and we've dealt with the history of 677, and we've got the 65-year prophecy split into two groups, 19 and 46. So hopefully that makes sense about how you create 723, what's producing 723, and how it connects to 677. You get 677 from the 65-year time prophecy. You get 723 from the chronology from 742 all the way through. 723, the Assyrians are going to come and destroy Samaria. They don't do the complete job, and they're going to come back and finish it. And this time they're going to take Manasseh because of Hezekiah's sin. So we could, as I say, spend all the time to go into all of this detail, but we're not going to. We're here in 723, and I'm going to take down this out of the way. So we're in 723, and now we're going to go to the 25-20 time prophecy. We could go to Leviticus 26, verse 18, 21, 24, and 28, and we would see brought to view there this pronouncement of 7 times. If we have time, we'll go back into that chapter and we'll talk a lot about the intricacies of what's going on there. But it talks about 7 times. You want to read that, or are we okay? So let's quickly read one of the verses. We'll read 21. Leviticus 26, 21. And if ye walk contrary unto me, and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins. So here's these 7 times, and we'll just go through the calculation really simply. A time equals 1 year, and 1 year is 360 days. So you have 7 times 360. If you just do that calculation, you're going to get 2,520 years, or days for a year. So that's the basic calculation. Was that too fast?
Yeah, 7 times. How did you get 1 year out of 7 times?
Oh, I got 1 year out of times.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that or not?
1 year at a time.
A time.
Time and a half time.
Times 1 year.
Yeah, so what is it? So what's the time again?
1 year.
360.
300.
Yeah, prophetic year.
Maybe I went through that too fast.
Or it's the
So-
Bible year.
If we do,
What's the Bible year?
are you familiar with the 1260?
Yeah.
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 And you're familiar that you can do that as 42 months. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
And you can do it as time times and the dividing of half a time, which is 3.5 times.
3.5 years.
Yeah. So you know it's 3.5 years. How do you know it's 3.5 years?
Because it was time and half time, but I didn't know what time was. That time was.
Oh, wait there. So I'll put times here, 3.5 times, and you're saying this equals a year.
Well, 1 time you're saying equals a year, right?
Okay, so 1 time. No, I'm asking what you're saying, not what I'm saying.
No, well, I want the
I'm just
She's
doing
just
this
trying to
one.
understand the
I'm
time.
just doing this one.
yeah, time, I didn't know what the value of time was.
But you just said year.
I know.
Oh, you didn't know that.
Because,
You didn't know
I
that.
didn't
Yeah, she's
know that.
unsure
I
about
didn't know
that,
that
yeah.
time equals 1 year. But I knew the 3, time, and half a time. Time,
Time times.
and half a time.
So 3.5.
Yeah,
So you've got 3.5 times. So do you know what that means?
well, 3.5 years.
But why do you say years? Is that because I just told you, or you already knew that?
I knew that, but I didn't know what time, what was the value of time.
She didn't connect.
Oh, okay, but you knew it was a year.
No, I didn't. So that's why I was asking the question.
Well, you just got it for granted.
She knew 3.5. She's heard 3.5.
I've heard 3.5
Half times
years.
and half.
You've heard 3.5 years.
What is the value of time, though? That's all I asked.
So
Yeah, I understand that. But when we did 3.5 times,
she just
you just said straight away,
3.5
you just said 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And I asked you, well, how do you know it's 3.5 years?
She didn't know the value.
Just probably we haven't heard, and said and hearing it.
Okay,
Another
so
time. Without the times registering.
Yeah,
okay.
just got a little gap in the middle there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all
So,
do.
because you took their word for it, just take my word for it.
Yeah.
You got, it says 3.5 times, and someone taught you along your journey
Yeah.
that a time is a year, or you just heard it was 3.5 years. So you know that a time must be a year, and the 3.5 must be 3.5.
I do.
You know how many months are there in a year?
12.
12 months. So there's 12 months in a year. Now, if we were to go into the book of Genesis and we were to do a study on the flood chronology, you could see that the Bible says that there's a time period of 150 days. Do we want to do that, or are you okay? Just,
Yeah.
no, I mean, you want to look at the verses, or are you okay just to do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
You want to go through the verses?
No, let's
Okay.
do this.
Yeah, I mean, I can go through the concept, or I can go and just prove it in the verses, but it's easy to see in the verses. You're just okay to do it at this level.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got 150 days, and then it expresses this same time period differently. It gives a time period. It says something on this month, something on that month, and when you calculate it, it works out that it's 5 months long. So you can show that 150 equals 5. 150 days equals 5 months. And if you do the calculation, divide that by 5, you'll know that 30 days equals 1 month. And it's that calculation which is the definition of how many days are in a month. This is pre-flood, if you like. Today, things have changed, because now it's 29 and a half. So I believe, that was what it was like in real life. And that there were 12 months in a year. You can show that through scripture. So if there's 12 months equals 1 year, then you've got 12 months times 30 days equals 1 year. And 3 12s are 36, 360 days equals 1 year. Are we okay with that? And if you go back into that prophecy which talks about 3.5 times, then you see what the word that you're actually using for time there. It actually says it's a period of time, or it can be a year. So we know that this is a year. And so we're going to come back into this one and say 3.5 times equals 3.5 years. And it would be 3.5 times equals 3.5 times 360 days. And we can do it, but I'll just get a calculator out if you want to. It works out at 1260 days. So you're going to use this idea that when you're going to bring it back into this story, that a time is 1 year is 360 days, and if you do 7 times, it would be 7 times 360. Or, if you're happy with this, 3.5 times is 1260. So all I would do is 7 equals 3.5 times what?
2.
2. So I would just do 1260 times 2, and that would take you to 2,520. Yeah. Okay. Do we need to prove? Because I can prove that a time is a year through another time prophecy. But if you're happy with that, then I won't bother. You happy with that? Okay. So that's how you're going to get to 7 times equals 25, 20 years. Now, there are some arguments about all of this which I've glossed over when people start getting excited about the grammar in this chapter and how to deal with all the language. And we have a response to that. But at this level, I'm content just to say that it says 3.5 times, it's 7 times, 360 equals 2,520 years. That's how the Millerites understood it, and I'm using their logic, their understanding of that. And I'm beginning it right here because it says, essentially, and we're going to read chapter 26 in a lot more detail, if you don't listen to me, if you don't keep the covenant, I'm going to punish you. So they didn't keep the covenant, and here's the punishment that's being brought to view. And so Christ says, here I'm going to punish you, and this initiates the 2520. So here they're going to be punished for 2,520 years. And if you do the calculation and go 723 and go 2,520 years in the future, you do 2,520, take away 723, you get 7, 9, 7, 1. You get to the year 1797. So the thing is, you've seen here that this is what the Millerites did. that they get to 1843 when they do that kind of calculation, and there's an inbuilt mistake into this issue because they're using a technique which needs a bit more sophistication to it. So there's this discrepancy because when you do this, you have to factor in how you go from BC to AD dates, and so it's a bit complicated. So it's not 1797; it actually comes out as 1798. Without explaining the intricacies of how you do that.
Is that because they forgot to start from 1 AD? Or is it that they started from 0
Well,
AD?
it's not that straightforward. It's just that if you do the calculation this way, the numbers just don't work, and it comes to the issue between ordinal and cardinal numbers and how you. Because what we're doing here is mass problem, but when we're doing here, these are not mass problems, these are dates. And what we've done is we've subtly shifted the type of numbers that we're dealing with from ordinal numbers to cardinal numbers. And when you do that, you get this discrepancy. So I'm just trying to keep it vague, otherwise we'll end up getting bogged down into the ins and outs of all of that. But if you're happy, not how it happened, but that it does happen, that you can see they come up with 1843, but you know it should be 1844. So we know that. So I'm not saying just do this and add a 0 or add a 1 onto it or do something like that. It's a much more comprehensive answer than that. But I'm just saying you can get to the correct answer. Let me show you the maths of that. So you're at 1798, and this is the punishment. But remember, Manasseh was an earnest, which means he was a guarantee or a down payment of what's going to happen. So we're going to see that this also initiates a 2520. And again, if we do the same with this one, we do 2520 and 677. I don't need to do the maths of that one because it's already up here. 2520, 677, you get to the year 1843, which you know should be 1844 because it says on this chart, we've got 677, goes all the way down to 1844. 2520 is locked into this chart. So you're going to get to the year 1844. So here's 1844. Now, we don't need to do the maths on this one and separate these because it's already done for you here. If you start and it's 46 years shifted, when you end it's going to be 46 years shifted as well. So we've got 46 years here. We've got 46 years between 1798 and 1844 if you do that calculation. Okay. The reason why this becomes important for us to understand is because the number 46 becomes a symbol of what? What does it become a symbol of?
Building a temple.
Building, what is it, brother?
Covenant.
A covenant. So I'll put the building of a temple, and you want to say covenant. And I'm going to put a church.
Yeah.
So it's the building of a church, or a dismantling of a church. It has something to do with what you are, a house, or the construction of it. So here you get these 46 years, the building of a church. Moses was up in the mount for 46 days doing what? What's he up there for?
Getting the
Getting the law, getting instructions for what? He's getting instructions on how to build a sanctuary.
That's right.
Yeah. So he's getting these instructions. So these 46 years, you see right here, these 46 years is dealing with the construction of a temple. And what's these 46 years dealing with? Destruction. This temple is going to get destructed. Destroyed. Destructed. Destructed. Okay. Seems to me.
Deconstructed.
Okay. I want to make the point here, in case you haven't noticed. This 2520, you've got two children. Okay? One here. His name is Ephraim, and his name is Judah. Okay? Two boys. They've done wrong. And you're going to punish, and actually, he wasn't here, he's down here, here he is. He's done wrong and he's going to be punished. how long is he going to be punished for?
7 times.
7 times. He's going to get punished 7 times. Now you've got to think, I've already warned you. Here's Ephraim. Ephraim was naughty as well. And he's going to be punished. Be careful now. How long is he going to be punished for?
Forever.
Agree with that? Forever. Forever doesn't mean forever, it means forever, yeah? When the Bible says all, it doesn't mean all, it means nearly all, yeah? Because it says all the world wandered after the beast.
Yeah, but nearly all. Yeah.
Because he's nearly all, because we're not going to be wandering after this, it's not everybody. So he's going to be wandering forever. Can everybody see that problem?
Until.
Yeah, so that's what he meant. That's what he meant when he says forever. Everybody understand how long? When does forever end? Yes, when he comes back at the end of the world.
Yeah.
So in our history, he's going to come back. So he's not punished for 2,520 years. So who's getting punished for 2,520 years? Because we've got 2520 here.
Yeah.
So what's that talking about? He's not talking about Ephraim. So this is the problem when we come to the 2520 and we have these two lines, that it's not as simple to say, well, he got punished for 2,500 years and he did. Because all of this punishment, yes, these people are being punished, but this theme here, the theme, this is what we want to pick up. We want to pick up that these two 2520s, there's only one of them to begin with. It's not two. Even though I've given you two, there's only one. Because what this is teaching is not that there's two separate things, but there's two themes. So this is the theme of scattering.
Oh, okay.
So I'll put theme. And this is the theme. What happened to Manasseh after he got taken to Babylon?
Got released.
He got sent back. Yeah. He went back to his family, went back home. And so he got gathered again. So this is the theme of gathering. It's one prophecy with two themes. So the question we want to ask ourselves is, this 2520, who took that punishment? Was it Manasseh or Judah?
Can you please repeat that? Sorry.
So remember, Manasseh in real life, he began to get punished, and he's going to be thrown out forever. Ephraim. He's going to be punished forever. But Judah here, when he got punished for 2,500 years, and he gets restored back here. Punishment stops. Everything's done and dusted. So this one here, who is getting this punishment? Is it Ephraim or Judah? No, because this one here is a totally different story.
Well, if it's not Ephraim, then it's one of them, then it'd have to be
It's Judah. This punishment here is actually discussing the story of Judah. So this is Judah's story as much as this is Judah's story. They're both Judah's story, both of them. So we're going to get these two things and combine them and give them or apply them to one person, Judah. Because Ephraim becomes a story in and of himself. He's a separate story. Because once he gets thrown out here, where's he gone into? Babylon. He's gone into Babylon, and how long did he stay there for? Forever. And by the way, right through this history, about here, this is 1798, we'll pull up this history, we're now between 27 and 34 AD. And what's that history? Which is Jesus. And there's a blood feud between two groups of people, and they're the Samaritans. These are Samaritans. They're not God's people. Kind of. They're not considered to be God's people, but God still identifies them as his own. But they're not God's people. And the 2520 is a punishment upon whom? It's upon God's people. There are two things I want to show you. The 2520, who's it for? God's people. We haven't tackled this issue, so this is new. In the book of Revelation, chapter 8 and chapter 9, it's shown on this chart here, where you get these angels. The 5th, 6th, and 7th angel. If it's the 5th angel, what must be there before that? 4 more. And those 4 more angels are in Revelation chapter 8, and these ones are found in Revelation chapter 9. So you've got 7 angels. And what they got in their mouths? Trumpet. So we call them the 7 trumpet angels, or the 7 trumpets. So you've got the 25-20, and you've got 7 trumpets. Both of these symbols, both symbols, are dealing with punishment. The 25-20 is a punishment for God's people. It's not a punishment for Babylon. You have to be part of God's people to receive this one. So, have a guess. Shouldn't guess, but 7 trumpets is a punishment for who? It's not going to be for God's people. First one is God's church. And who's the other group? Rome. But we want to call them Babylon. We call them Babylon.
Yeah.
And if this is Babylon, Babylon is the name of the city. So what city would this be called?
Jerusalem.
Where does Jerusalem? Where does Jerusalem live?
What's Jerusalem called?
So this is the story of 2 cities,
Yeah.
Jerusalem and Babylon.
Yeah.
So if you see these 2 punishments, and one of them is being meted out to God's people, the other one must be meted out to the other group. This is the trumpet power which is going to be given against Babylon. But Babylon comes in different guises. Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Pagan Rome, Papal Rome. And this trumpet power, these punishments are going to be targeted against Babylon, but we want to be specific about that because it's going to be pagan and Papal Rome.
Can you just explain then why the top one has an end date, 1798?
Yeah, I'm going to go through that, but I want to just make sure that we understand the concept that this punishment here is not being applied to Ephraim.
Yeah.
Because Ephraim are now Babylon.
Yeah.
And they can't be receiving punishment if they're Babylon. They can't be receiving the 25-20. It doesn't work. So this theme here is a theme of scattering that's going to be applied to Judah.
Yeah.
God's people all the way you go through. So God's people are now going to receive this scattering and gathering. So we want to get this, and we want to just subtly bring it all the way down and say we're going to apply it to this group of people, even though historically or in this story it's being attached to Hoshea, the northern tribes. Because as soon as this happened, they're just going to be destroyed. They're not even in the story anymore. That's it. Done and dusted. And it's this theme that we want to pick up, that the 25-20 is for God's people, and the 7 trumpets is for, we're calling it Babylon, but it's specifically pagan and papal Rome.
Does that mean all Jews today are Benjamin and Judah?
Well,
And Levi.
yeah, I understand your
Yes,
question.
Levites
I
as
understand. Not that straightforward, because if you come back into this story here, and you come to Hezekiah, so here's Hezekiah, and you know God is really kind. He warned these people, Isaiah 28. He warned them to get their act together in the time period before Hezekiah. So they've got their warning. That should be enough. But even then, Lord bends over backwards. When Hezekiah comes to the reign, you know, not literally months, but really, really close to this destruction happening, he gives them one more chance. Hezekiah is going to sort out the mess that his father made in his own country. He'll sort that mess out, and then once that mess is sorted out, he's going to make a call for these people to come out of apostasy. And he's going to say, if you want to, you can come over onto our side. And only a few came. But there were people who came from that place, and some of them came, visited and went back, but some of them stayed. Some of them listened and repented. And so you do have some of those people in here, but we're just talking about bloodlines then,
Yeah.
which is a bit of...
Was that the Passover?
That's the Passover, 2 Chronicles 29 and 30. So there's the second call that they have to, it might even be more than, I shouldn't say second call because there are many more calls than that, because Habakkuk is over here, and Amos, I think, is over here. You get these prophets who are continually warning them, so it's not too cool. Are we okay with that? I want us to be okay that there's only one punishment, 125:20, so this story is going to give it into two themes, and these 25:20, we can't be thinking that they're applied to Ephraim, they're applied here to God's people.
It really makes sense. I've never actually had that explained like that before.
No.
So that pagan and papal is actually happening to the bottom kingdom, and you've got the 46 years on either side of destruction and restoration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that all okay?
Yeah.
So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. I already did 23 and 25:20, and I said the relationship between them is this 220 restoration. So we already did that.
Yeah.
But now we're taking this theme and we're saying if you do this and this, 677, 1844, 1798 and 723, we're saying this is the scattering and we're saying this is the gathering or restoration. So this theme is dealing with scattering or punishment, and this theme is dealing with restoration. When we did the 2300 days, which would be kind of like that, what did we say 1844 represents? Day of Atonement, cleanses the sanctuary, we're going to restore the temple,
Yeah.
the sanctuary is going to be clean. So here we have restore. And what happened to Manasseh when he got taken to Babylon? He got brought back, he got restored. So you have this same theme here. This 25:20 is the theme of restoration or gathering. And here, Manasseh gets scattered, and 1798 marks the end of 1260-year prophecy, and that 1260, or 3.5 times that we have here, that was a period of scattering. So you have the beginning of the scattering and the end of the scattering. So this is the theme of scattering. So we can see that this concept of scattering and gathering really does fit with the dates, with the history, with the events that are going on. A gathering and a scattering, and you see it by the events that go on. So this is the theme, which is created by the beginning and the end. These connecting links here tell you the theme of this line, and this connecting link tells you the theme of this line. So we've got the scattering and the gathering. So
What's that scattering in the middle? Where the 2,300 days starts? Is that right?
you mean what's this?
No, up the top that is.
Oh, this is saying this the whole theme.
Oh, okay.
Just like I did here, it's the theme of scattering,
Right.
and this is the theme of gathering. So I should take the R's out and call it G's, really, shouldn't we? Because we're going to use gathering, consistent term. So this is scattering, and this is gathering. Now we already said that we're comfortable with 3.5 times, and we said 3.5 times was, if you double it, you get 7 times. So 7 is 3.5 times 2. There's 2 of them.
Yeah.
So we could come back into this history here, and we've got 723, and we've got 1798, and how long is this? It's 7 times, because we've got 7 times from this calculation here.
Mm-hmm.
And if we divided that in half, we have 3.5 times and 3.5 times.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And this 3.5 times here, the 1260 years, everybody knows when that begins. Which is
538.
you've done it.
538.
You've got it there. Where is it? Down here. 538.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it's 538. And what's really good is that if you calculate from 723, it exactly takes you to 538 if you go 3.5 times. So there's this whole pattern here that, as Adventists, we're familiar with. And what's really funny is everybody agrees with half of it. So all we're just saying is just meet us halfway. They come on the other half, and it's not. What's the problem? I tell you what the problem is. We said that there are 3 problems in our church that we disagree with: 2520, and Islam, and the daily. We don't agree with the daily. And as soon as you start not agreeing with the daily, you're going to get into problems. Yeah. Because in this story here, where I've got these 2, 3.5 times, and you can see it's all straightforward, it's not difficult. This story here is the story of the daily. So if you reject the daily, you can't accept this. Just philosophically, you just can't see it. You won't deal with it because you don't believe that this is a daily. If you believe the daily, you could easily swallow that. It's not a hard pill to swallow. But if you reject the daily, then you have to ask yourself, what does this mean? How do you explain all of that? And it really becomes difficult to explain. Because as soon as you start explaining this, then you need to be able to identify it in Scripture, not just stories, but even the prophetic books, particularly the book of Daniel. As soon as you start doing that, you get confronted with the history or the problem of the daily. So this is the daily, and this comes under a number of different terms, but we can call it the abomination that maketh desolate, or the transgression of desolation. It comes under different titles. And our whole story in 1844 comes from what book? Book of Daniel, chapter 8, verse 14. And if you go one verse before that, because this is the answer, isn't it? The answer is 2,300 days.
Yeah.
And what's the question? Let's read the question.
It's just not the sanctuary.
So in Daniel 8:13, then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint, which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice? So with the word sacrifice is italicized, it shouldn't be there. It says concerning the daily, so here's the daily, and the transgression of desolation. Here's the transgression of desolation. So the way a Millerite would have read that verse, they would be saying, how long is this vision from here to here that's dealing with the daily and the transgression of desolation? To do what? To punish the host and to punish the sanctuary. And the answer is 2,300 days. And all that's being done in that story is they're neglecting just to go back. Let me just be careful what I'm doing here.
Yeah, I was going to say that's lining up with 1798.
Yeah, this is 1844 here. So when you do the calculation, you'll see all that's missing is the. In Daniel chapter 8, what nation does it start with? We tackled this before. It starts with the ram, Daniel chapter 8. With the ram.
Oh, sorry,
Medo-Persia. It starts with Medo-Persia. So who's missing if you're going to start with Medo-Persia? Babylon. So in this story, when it says, how long is the vision that's dealing with the daily and transgression of desolation, the only power that's missing is this one at the beginning here, which is Babylon. So it's dealing with Medo-Persia, Greece, and pagan Rome. All of this is the daily, and then the transgression of desolation here, and it's just missing Babylon. So instead of arguing and saying all this is nonsense, the question we should be really asking, in Daniel chapter 8, why have they ignored Babylon? Because Babylon, if you go to the first verses, who's ruling at the time? It's Babylon. Babylon is still in the ascendancy. Medo-Persians haven't got onto the scene. So it's still Babylon. So instead of dealing with those kind of questions, we just kind of make a whole mess of it and just ignore everything. So when we deal with this issue of, we'll look at this one, when we deal with this issue here of this scattering and gathering, you can't get away from the fact that 723 to 1798 can be divided exactly halfway, and you have 2 3.5 times.
Amen.
And it's divided equally between the punishment of the daily and the punishment of the transgression of desolation, or the pagan powers and the papacy. Paganism and papacy. That's what's being dealt with in this prophecy.
Can I ask a question about the daily?
Please.
Obviously something was going on back at Jerusalem for Daniel to see in vision, that they were trampling on the sanctuary back in Jerusalem. And so is that where the daily, where he says, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily and the transgression of the desolation? So can you explain what was happening? Where was this vision? Where was it supposed to have been, taken place?
So, if you mark the beginning interaction between Babylon and God's people, not from back here, but when you go to Babylon properly, because it begins with Assyria. These are the Assyrians doing all of this pre-work, and then it's going to switch to Babylon. And if we just go to Jeremiah chapter 50, it tells us that there. Verse 17.
50.
Yeah, 50, 15, 17. It says, Israel is a scattered sheep, the lions have driven him away. When it uses the word Israel here, it's saying 12 tribes. Don't just read Ephraim. Israel is a scattered sheep, the lions have driven him away. First the king of Assyria hath devoured him, and last this Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, hath broken his bones. So it tells you here that the 12 tribes are being punished, first by the Assyrians, then by Nebuchadnezzar, or the Babylonians. It's a 2-step punishment. So the Assyrians, then the Babylonians. It mentions Nebuchadnezzar. Now, there's this kind of... Remember we spoke about the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemaic Empire? These two families that are struggling one with another. You get the similar kind of thing in the land of Shinar, between the Assyrians and the Babylonians. And there's this constant struggle between them. The Assyrians have been in the ascendancy for a long time. But the Babylonians are going to come to the ascendancy and they're going to put down these Assyrians. And that work really begins with Nebuchadnezzar's dad. And once you get to Nebuchadnezzar's dad, you can track down through the Babylonian kings until you get to the very last king, who is Belshazzar, who is brought to view in Daniel chapter 8. So he's the last king of Babylon. And if you count them all, there's 7 Babylonian kings, which should tell you something, because there's 7 of them.
And it starts with Nebuchadnezzar's father.
Yes. He's the one that breaks the shackle between, the Assyrians are keeping them under. They're essentially one unhappy family, and you get this family who basically said, we're going to have enough. It's basically like the war between the Scots and the English. It's one country, one island, but they just always squabbled between them. And sometimes you get a Scottish king ruling in London, and sometimes you get an English king. When you get a Scottish one, the dynamic of the country changes. And when you get an English one, the dynamic changes. It's that kind of interaction between the Assyrians and the Babylonians. So by the time you get to Nebuchadnezzar's dad, he's now finally squashed the Assyrians and they're out of the picture. Now this is Babylon as we understand it. You get the same story between the Medes and the Persians. Same kind of thing. The Medes are the ones who are ruling, and the Persians gradually rise up until you get to Cyrus. When you get to Cyrus, the Medes are out of the picture. And if you look at the history, and even the scriptures talk about it, they talk about Persia exclusively post-Cyrus. Cyrus and all the kings after. They're Persian kings, not Medo-Persian kings. In fact, because the Persian kings were so powerful at the end, you don't even hear about Media anywhere. No one's ever heard of that. Everybody's heard about Persia. So it's the same dynamic. So the Babylonians have come on the scene, and Nebuchadnezzar's father's died. Nebuchadnezzar now is on the scene. And we're at the beginning of the book of Daniel. So by the time you get... So let's... they've gone into captivity now for 70 years. The Jews get taken into captivity for 70 years. And Daniel 8 is somewhere here. And there's an... Without making this overly complicated, it might seem that I'm making a mistake, but I'm not trying to be accurate with my 70 and its start and its end date. I just want to do this in a generic sense. This I'm going to put as Zedekiah here. I'm not trying to make the distinction of when it actually starts, but just as a concept, so don't hold me to this, that I'm marking the 70th Zedekiah. When Zedekiah gets punished, all his children die, his eyes are poked out, now they're going to destroy the temple. So the temple's destroyed here. That's why I put 70 this way. They get destroyed at the beginning of the captivity. Jerusalem's destroyed. There is no sanctuary. And Daniel chapter 8 is here. Daniel chapter 8. And is there a sanctuary? There is no sanctuary. It hasn't been around for decades. So what's being discussed in Daniel chapter 8 isn't what they're doing with the sanctuary, because there is no sanctuary at the moment. So this is the story of Daniel chapter 8. Daniel is the prophet of God, and he knows that Belshazzar is going to be the last king. Prophecy teaches him that. So he knows that much. In fact, it says that the Babylonians are going to rule until the third generation. You've got Nebuchadnezzar, his son, and then his grandson, Belshazzar. So Daniel already knows that. Then Daniel finds out that there's these 70 years, and he can calculate. So he knows they're approaching the end of the 70 years. He already knows all of that. The Medes and the Persians are rising up. They're becoming a force to contend with, and he understands that. So he can read current affairs, and he knows that Babylon's about to be destroyed. So they're coming to the end of the 70 years. Everything's set up. Then he has the dream and the vision of Daniel chapter 8. And what is Daniel expecting? The prophecy was this, that you're going to be taken captive for 70 years, and at the end of 70 years, what's going to happen? Restoring. So you're going to go back to Jerusalem. And when you go back to Jerusalem, you can't have Jerusalem without a temple. So if Jerusalem's going to be restored, then that means the temple's going to be restored. Let's just assume this is 15 years. So he has this vision, and he knows in 15 years they're all going back home. It's not 15 years, but assume it is. In 15 short years, it's all going to get sorted out. The temple's going to be rebuilt. So he has this dream, vision, and it says, by the way, the Medes and the Persians are going to come on. He knows the Medes and Persians are going to be here. He knows the Medes and Persians are the ones that are going to free them. Because he understood, he already knows that. And he knows Cyrus is the king, because he's famous. Just like you and I know famous generals or kings around in any country, because we read the newspapers. He knows what's happening. But then he starts hearing about Greece. Now, Greece is a nobody, two-bit state somewhere in Europe. They're nobodies. And then he hears about this other nation, and because they're so far in the distance, they don't even have a name. So you can't even say pagan Rome in Italy, because they don't even exist as a nation. Greece is about the best you can do, because it wouldn't make any sense. So he's already getting this vision, which is undoing everything that he understands, because he's expecting 15 years, and now he realises they're going to be punished, not by Babylon, but then by Medo-Persia, then Greece, and then this other nation, and it's all going wrong. So he's going through all this vision, he doesn't understand what's happening, and then at the end, you know when you say you put the knife and you twist it, it gets even worse, because then God says, by the way, you think you've only got a few years left, But I want to tell you, you're not going to get any restoration of your temple for 2,500 years or so. So he's totally flummoxed about what's happening. And so he doesn't understand anything about this vision because he's expecting everything to finish. And now he realizes there's a lot more to go. And no one's going to be alive in 2,000 years. So he doesn't understand what this vision is all about. And he's totally confused. So he has to go back and study the prophecies, which is Daniel chapter 9. So he's going back and figure out what has gone wrong. So the story of Daniel chapter 8 is the following, that God is trying to teach Daniel that don't worry about your local, literal situation, because you are an actor. Mm-hmm. Daniel's not a real person. He's real, but he's an actor, and he's acting this huge play that's not this 70-year little thing in this little land in the Bronze Age, thousands of years ago. This is a great panoramic story that he's involved with, and he needs to rise up and realise that the great controversy is being discussed here, not a little building in Jerusalem in the middle of nowhere. That's what this story of Daniel chapter 8 is about. It's not about going back after 70 years. It's about the great controversy, and Daniel doesn't understand that. And the reason Daniel doesn't understand that is because Daniel is who? Us. Who is Daniel? Daniel is you and me. Daniel is us. At the end of the world, we don't understand what the great... And we've read the book. We've read the book and we still don't understand it. I mean, nobody understands about the 2520. And it's one of the most precious prophecies that there is. Both at the beginning and at the end, there's so much... And we don't understand the great controversy. So Daniel is a symbolic representation of us. We are clueless about what's going on. We think everything's going to get sorted out. And the Lord said this is a lot more complicated than you could ever imagine. And you're in Daniel chapter 8, and it's going to take him another 4 chapters, him being God, to straighten Daniel out in his understanding. So by the very end, and the very end isn't Daniel chapter 12, the very end is Daniel chapter 10. When he gets to Daniel chapter 10, he says, I got it. The penny dropped. I understand what the great controversy is about. I understand all of this thing. And when he gets to that stage, he's not really bothered about the 70 years anymore. It's irrelevant whether they're going to build a temple in 70 years or not. Because he realises this is a great controversy that's going on. So when we come to the 2300 days and it talks about the restoration of the temple, it's at one level talking about this thing here, but it's a much bigger story. And we as Adventists think we know all the answers because 1844, and we're experts on all of that, because we came to be experts on the third angel's message, which is when that starts. But we're clueless about the everlasting gospel. We don't understand it, just like Daniel didn't understand it. So when we deal with this issue of local and literal, we say forget that. This should be worldwide and symbolic. But Adventists are Daniels. We think this story about Daniel 8:14 is something local that happened in the eastern seaboard of the United States 170 years ago. It was a local, literal event that some Adventists or Millerites had this excitement over, and that's what this story is about. I mean, think about how, this is why evangelical Christianity mocks us. And you say, is that all you guys hang up on, this event that never happened by some Victorian Christians 170 years ago, and that's what you're basing everything about? And we say, like sheepishly, yeah, apologetically, and that's why we apologise. That's why we have to fabricate a gospel to make them happy, because we don't understand the everlasting gospel. We don't understand what Daniel 8:13 and 14 are really about, because we reject all of these truths. We reject the 2520. If we understood our heritage, we would defend and we'd bark back at these people and show them how wrong they are in their understanding of the great controversy compared to us. But because we're locked in this mindset of local literal, and we're fixated about Daniel 8:14, 1844, we live in the past in a way that is unhealthy. our biggest obstacle today, and you're going to be faced with this over and over again, and it's going to trip you up over and over again because it's embedded in you, is this issue of literalism. And you may not have noticed it, but you've done it about 30, 40 times already this week. You ask questions, and they're all, at one level or not, about some kind of literal application of the truths that we're teaching. And, you know, maybe not kindly, but we've replied, take it symbolically, because you're Daniel, we're Daniel. I still get tripped up in this, we all do, because we want it to be literal. We want 3.5 days to be 3.5 years, and we do a calculation and say, something's going to happen in 3.5 years or something like that. Or we want something to grab onto because we want an easy ride. Everybody wants it to be easy. When you go symbolic, it becomes hard work.
So daily in the terms of, 723 to 538,
Yeah.
As you've given us.
Yep.
Our understanding is that the daily refers to paganism.
Ours,
Because Rome wasn't in existence at that time.
who is ours? When you say ours understanding, you mean mine? Or agnotism?
Mine.
No, I mean mine or agnotism, that's what I mean, ours.
Well,
Yours or mine?
yes, so what is daily in this reference from
In
723?
that reference,
Yeah.
the daily in Daniel 8:13 equals Medo-Persia, Greece, and pagan Rome. That's what the daily is. And the transgression of desolation equals papacy.
But what about 723?
Mm.
Isn't that Assyria as well?
We have to be careful. Because Daniel 8:13 and 14 is a story about 2,300 days. Remember? And 2,300 days starts in the year 457, which is the third step of 7 Persian kings. So this is Persia, Medo-Persia. That's why it starts with the ram of Medo-Persia. It's not 710. This is not 723. This is 300 years after 723, and this is what trips up Adventists, and we can get tripped up because it's multiple thoughts and concepts that you think you've got it, and suddenly it just slips out of your hand. And I'm happy that it does, because what it's teaching you, hopefully, is that you're experiencing what Ezekiel experiences. When he looks up into heaven and he sees this complicated structure which has got all these wheels within wheels, and it looks like utter confusion, until he meditates and beholds it, and then he begins to see order and unity and uniformity into this thing. So the story of Daniel 8:13 to 14 is Medo-Persia, Greece, pagan Rome. This is the daily.
So the daily is only part of paganism then. It's only part of that,
Or that time period?
whole picture of paganism.
Yeah, because remember the question I said that you need to ask yourself, why does Daniel chapter 8 not start with Babylon? Because if you go to Daniel 2, it starts with Babylon. If you go to Daniel 7, it starts with Babylon. As soon as you get to Daniel 8, Medo-Persia. Daniel 8 and Daniel 9 are the same. As soon as you get to Daniel 11, it starts with Medo-Persia. So you see there's these differences between them, and we need to go and understand why that is. We can recognise it, but because we don't have any clues or anchor points to understand why, we end up ignoring it. And it's okay to ignore it, but don't get tripped up and make a mistake when you ignore it.
Traditionally, we're told that Babylon had passed.
And it hasn't. You can show. The reason I'm saying about 15, because I don't remember the exact dates off the top of my head, but it's nowhere near the end. The third year of Belshazzar, when it picks it up here, there's a long way to go before you're going to get to the end. Years. It's not like weeks or something. So it's idol worship.
Idolatry.
Okay.
Idolatry.
And what I mean by idol worship, I mean it's a concept.
Idolatry.
So it's that as well. So Medo-Persia is a country. So the daily is a country. In fact, it's lots of countries. And it's a single country. And it's not even a country. And it's a title. So I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got 4 definitions for the daily.
It has a spiritual application to ourselves in this time, doesn't it?
We'll give 5 then. It's personal.
You know, to doing away with the sin now.
Well,
is that still?
I'm not sure if it's the daily that's actually dealing with
Well,
that.
I remember some talks ages ago that Jeff did, and it was bringing the daily into getting rid of, you know,
Go easy on the new
self-exaltation.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're talking
Yes,
about
Gadol,
Gadol, which
that's
is not the daily,
No,
but it's connected to it.
Okay.
But we'll stick it in there.
I think it is Gadol.
So when you say it's one nation, you mean all those pagan kings? Or you just mean that one group of people?
This definition, I mean what I say. It's one nation, and I'll tell you what the nation is. It's right here. This one here. It's that toe. That's what daily is, just right there. It's that, but it's also, because a symbol can mean more than one thing. So I've given you, I'll take this one out because it really is good to deal with that.
Okay.
I've got 1, 2, 3, I've given you 4 definitions of what the daily is. So it causes people headache because they want simple answers, and it's not simple. It is simple if I just say it's that. I can give you the verse for it, that's simple. But if you try and use that definition and put it into a different verse, it won't work. So you say, well, your whole concept of the daily is wrong. I'm saying, no, it's not. It's just because it means something different. And then they say, well, you're just manipulating verses to suit yourself up. So you're just making it up as you go along. You can't respond to people like that. This is the test that we have, whether you get it or whether you don't.
So why is it that one nation? Sorry,
Why
I'm
is it?
being ignorant. Yeah, I'm not understanding. Why is it that particular one nation?
Do I need to go to, should we read the verse? Is that what you meant? I'm not sure why it is.
The
Why isn't
Visigoths.
it? Yeah, why isn't it?
What verse is it?
Daniel 12 verse 11.
Daniel 12 verse 11. Okay.
Daniel 11 verse 31. But we'll go with
okay.
Daniel. We'll go with Daniel 12:11.
Oh, okay. That's when that was them that come and give their power to the papacy. Is that what you're talking about? Daniel 11 verse 31.
When Daniel 12 verse 11, Clovis, King of France, is going to do a service for the papacy in taking down the Visigoths. But it says the daily shall be taken away.
Right. Okay.
But I can't use that definition in Daniel 8:11. If I use that definition in Daniel 8, it won't work. It's different definitions for different verses. There are 5 verses in the book of Daniel that contain the word daily in it. And you have to have different concepts to meet those varying verses.
Well, what does the actual word mean?
Oh, it means this. Continual or continuous. It means forever, perpetual. It's always the same thing. That's what it means for daily.
Well, it seems to me
Something
like
makes sense.
it seems to me
Yeah,
like
it does, because if I was in your shoes, I was thinking, this is complicated. It doesn't make any sense.
it seems to me like we could just do a study on that, you know, like just sort of carefully go through that, you know.
Yep, a good 7 hours would bottom out the day if you did it properly. I mean, no, I don't mean joking way, but if you did it properly, that you become familiar with it and you understand the twists and turns. And when you study the Bible that way, you know the whole aim of it is to change character. You become a changed person. When you go into scriptures and you see the light that's in there, it just changes your experience, your perspective of who God is. I think it's really, that's what we're supposed to do. All we're doing here this week is whetting your appetite, because we're not really doing Bible study. And I know Brother Patrick quotes a lot more Bible verses than me, but even then, we're not really sitting and discussing it and poring over those verses in a way that we really need to establish your faith.
I just can't understand, and I'm
Keep on going.
I
want you to
really
understand.
can't understand why daily has been separated into a separate time period to the abomination or the transgression of desolation. I really can't understand that.
Okay, because I'm saying this, that the daily is paganism. That's what the daily is. It means paganism is non-Christian. So you're going to get this enemy that's now going to start warring against God's people. I'm just thinking.
There you're talking in our terms.
I'm just thinking what I want to say here.
Because, I mean, 723 to 538, I still haven't quite worked out how I managed to write this wrong. I think I've got this wrong.
What we say?
No. I'm just saying from 723.
723.
Yeah, to 538. Remember?
Yeah.
Little something
Yeah.
there, up there.
720 to 528.
Yeah, I
What?
just don't know how the daily is only applied to that period. And then the transgression of desolation is applied to 538 to
Okay.
1798.
Okay.
Is that, that, maybe I need to ask that question more clearly.
No.
Like
Let me try and tackle that. Let's start with Babel. The floods happened. We're in the Tower of Babel, and they're going to build. What did they build?
The tower.
In Babel.
Tower.
They built a tower,
Yeah.
and what else did they build?
City.
Do you know that? It actually says in the passage. So they build a tower in a city. So how many things is that?
2.
2. And if it's 2, what is he teaching you?
Church and state.
No. Babel wasn't good, was it?
Church and state.
So what was it teaching you? What did we say about 2 things? What did we teach about 2 things? I know why. Do we know why she said good?
Yes,
We've got
we
2 is
do.
good.
10 and 2.
Yeah.
But I was trying to work out how could that be good.
Yeah. So when you've got these 2 things, it's, remember we had Syria and Ephraim,
Yes.
They come together.
and what's that?
Church and
Amalgamation.
state.
Church and state.
Church and, yeah.
Yes.
So we've got church and state. So you know this is the story of church and state. You can prove that and demonstrate it. But this combination here, if you track it all the way through, it basically comes to Assyria, it becomes Babylon, etc. Okay? And what is their religion, all of these people? Paganism. What did you say, sir?
Oh, I said Baal worship.
Baal worship. This is all paganism. But I don't want to call it paganism, I want to call it spiritualism.
That works for me.
So this is spiritualism. And then, when you do spiritualism, what does it look like? What do all these pagan religions do? How do they worship their gods?
Human sacrifices.
Sacrifices. Okay, so they're all doing sacrifice. The question is, why are they doing sacrifices? Why are they doing them?
To use their God.
Yeah, but who gave them that idea?
They're a counterfeit.
Who gave them that idea?
They're copying the original.
Sorry?
No.
Satan did?
God,
Why would Satan have done that?
because he's copying God
Yeah.
through the sanctuary. So
Because he wants them
Through the
to worship.
Where's the first
Well,
sacrifice that you
right,
see?
right.
Oh, well, they're trying to copy.
Where's the first sacrifice you see?
Copy.
And who told them to do that?
God.
God did.
So
So they're copying that.
so here you've got
Rebellion.
true religion, and theirs
Yeah.
based upon
Yeah.
sacrifice.
Mm.
Okay? So the true religion is sacrifice, and you're going to have a counter religion,
Yeah.
and what do you have to do?
Sacrifice.
You have to do sacrifices.
Yeah.
Because you want to induce the people to come over onto your side, so you want to make it look the same. Okay? So God gets onto the idea about that, and he says, okay, we need to sort the problem out. So we're going to go for a few thousand years, and then he says, you know what we're going to do? Without telling everybody, we're going to stop the sacrifices. And when did they stop?
At the cross.
Yeah.
So we're at the cross here,
Cross.
and there's no sacrifices. And this spiritualism, they're not as quick as we are. It takes them a while to catch up. So they carried on doing all their sacrifices all the way down. And, you know, Paul's telling everybody, it's useless, stop doing that because it doesn't do anything. But these spiritualists all carried on doing it for a good while longer because they don't get it. And so there's no sacrifices. And so if you've got no sacrifices, does it look like their religion? No.
No.
So you're not going to trick people. So suddenly this church is going to explode in size because everybody can see the difference between them. So you get a massive growth in the church now because they can see there's a difference between our religion and your religion. And it's all about sacrifices. But Satan, he might be slow, but he's not a fool. So he latches on, and it takes him a good while. It takes me, in fact, about 500 years to work out. It's pretty slow. So by the time you get here, he's going to say, I've got it. Let's stop the sacrifices. So he's going to stop sacrificing now. So he's going to say, no sacrifice. But he still loves spiritualism, so he's going to combine them, and he's going to give his chief man a dress code. And if we turn that around, because that's what his hat looks like, if we turn it around, it looks like that. Which is what my sister said. Dagon, yeah, Dagon, it's right, Dagon, so we know that. So he still codes it in there, but now there's no more sacrifice, and there's no sacrifice all the way down here. So you can see that now they're on an equality. As soon as you get the equality, what's going to happen to God's people? They're clueless now, they're going to become beguiled, and they're going to cross over, and it's all going to look messy. Just like it did back here. They kept on getting confused, who was right and who was wrong. If it's Baal, worship him. If it's God, worship him. And they're looking, thinking, which one is it? We can't work it out because you look the same. They've both got the same altar, the same animal. They're both doing the same thing. You can't tell the difference. So there has to be a difference, and now they're back on the same. There's no difference between the two. So God's people are going to start getting into trouble. And then what's God going to do? He's going to sort out the problem, because down here, in this time period, he's going to tell people to rebel. And rebellion is called a protest. And this is Protestantism. So as soon as you get Protestantism, now you're back on track. Now you can see there's a difference between you and us. You might call yourself no sacrificing people, but you look different to us. You wear fish hats and we don't. So there's a difference between you and us again. And now what's going to happen? The church is going to explode again and grow. But they get back on track and they counter it. Then they have a counter-reformation, start infiltrating wherever things go bad again. And then you come down all the way to, so you've gone through this, you've gone through spiritualism here. And what do we call this? This is Catholicism.
Which is paganism baptised,
Yeah.
as you're right.
Which is fine, but I don't want to call it paganism baptised. I want to call this a no sacrifice. This is a Christian church.
Yeah.
It's a real proper church. For real. This is spiritualism, and this is not spiritualism. This is Christianity. And now we've got these rebels going on, the Protestants, so they're going to counter this, and what they're going to do is they're going to take these Protestants and they're going to capture them. And so the Protestants come on this side, and they're called apostates. What we call apostate Protestantism. And that's the ruling power since Millerite history all the way to the end of the world. The Catholics aren't really even on the scene. It's Protestantism that rules the world today. And they've been doing so for about the last 170 years. So let's track this. 1, 2, 3. Yeah? You see this progressive power coming on. Now, here you only had spiritualism. And my brother said, this is paganism baptized into Christianity. And I said, well, just let's say they're real Christians. Remember that? He just said that even just 30 seconds ago. But the point that he wants to make is this, because he's saying they never lost number 1. So here you've got number 1 with number 2. So first you only had one enemy to deal with, and now you've got 2 enemies to deal with. And where did the Protestants come from?
Yeah, right.
Where did they come from, Protestantism?
Catholic.
They came from the Catholics. New people, but they're part of the same thing. But they never lost their pagan roots. So here you've got 1 and 2 and 3. All of them are together at the end of the world. You get this progressive revelation that's going through history. And by the time you get to the end here, you've got all 3. And what are these 3? The dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And they're all alive as well at the end of the world.
Those are 3 frogs.
The spirit that comes out of those 3 frogs, yes. Revelation 16, verse 13. So that you get this progressive revelation, this threefold enemy, all alive here as well at the end of the world. So you can see that there's a transition from here to here. Yeah? And why did they change? Why did they change from here to here? Why did they change from this history to this history? What was the reason? What are they doing here? What are they doing here? Sacrifices. And what are they doing here? No. And why did they make the shift? What drove them to make the shift?
Copying God.
Because God did the shift change. When God changed, they have to change. Can you see that?
To look similar again.
Yeah,
To be a counterfeit. To be a counterfeit.
That's all it is. It's counterfeit. They have to have it, so they have to change. But it's all the same thing. This is all satanic powers. But they have to change to carry on an effective warfare. So the story that you're asking here, between the daily and the transgression of desolation, is this story that first you have this, which is the dragon power, or the daily. And by the way, my sister was saying, does it begin in Medo Persia or Babylon? It doesn't begin in Medo Persia, and it doesn't begin in Babylon. This began right in heaven, because it's continual. It's been a warfare all the way through. But they have to change their dress. It's still paganism, but it's dressed up in Christianity. They have to change what they look like to go with the times. So that's what that's teaching you in Daniel 8:13, is you go from the daily transgression of desolation, because the daily just doesn't cut it anymore, because you can't trap people doing sacrifices when the true religion says you're not allowed to do any more sacrifices. They have to change their dress code. They have to change what they're going to do and operate to meet up with Christ, to have this deception. So that's what this shift change from daily transgression to desolation is all about. Essentially, it's all the same thing all the way through. If I were to say the daily means continuous, how can the daily stop? It can't stop. It has to carry on all the way through. But you said, and I agreed with you, and I'm not you, but that this was Babylon, and what's this nation? What's his nation? Babylon. Babylon. It's Babylon all the way through. All the same religion, because it's continuous, or the continual. It's all the same thing, but now they just wear different types of hats. Sorry? There's nothing new, but they're just going to change their clothing and their form of worship. So that's all that's teaching. It says, first it looked like this, but then it looked like this, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing as continually doing this thing of exalting itself above God. And I haven't answered your question, I don't think, yet. Or I have. I feel like I haven't.
I just don't like that diagram.
Which one?
On the other and one on A.
Now, once you get it, it'll just go boom. Yeah, it's one of the most powerful things.
Which one you mean?
This one that I put there, the daily, and then I don't know.
The
it's
two
not like that
designating
anymore.
powers.
Yeah, because this is here. I've got 3.5 times. I've got the daily and the transgression of desolation. You don't like that?
No.
You like that?
Maybe I wrote it down wrong. I don't know.
Bring it up and have a look.
Bring it up. That one there. Did you have that one up there?
That's exactly what I've got here. I've got 723, 1798. I haven't got 538 in here. 3.5 times the daily. That's exactly what I've got.
Yeah. That's good. And then it doesn't add up to 2000. What? 25, 20.
It doesn't?
I don't know.
Yeah, it
Oh,
does.
okay.
It does.
Let's do the maths of that.
1260 on one side,
Yeah.
and 1260 on the
Oh,
other.
let's do
3.5
that.
is 1260.
It's
I
right.
don't know. Maybe on.
So it's
No, no.
1260.
It's not
It's at
you.
the end of a hard day.
I need some water.
What I did was,
Yeah.
I went through it too quickly, so let me go through this really slowly. We've got 3.5 times There it is, 3.5 times. And the time is 1 year, and 1 year is 12 months, and it's 12 times 30 days, and 12 times 3 is 36, so it's 360 days. So that's straightforward. And I'm going to do 360 times 3.5. Hopefully that's going to work out. 0, 0, 8 and 8 is 16, and we've got 1 plus 0 plus 1 is 2 plus 1.
And just the
And there was
decimal.
a point there, because it was the point there. So we've got 1260, we're okay with that. So then I've got 1260 here, and I've got 1260 here. So I've got two 1260s, 12, 5, 2520. So it adds up exactly to that number. And if I were to do 1798 and 723, we add that, 8 plus 3 is 11, 9 plus, I'm adding them together.
Yeah, adding it.
I have to add them.
Yeah.
9 plus 2 is 11, plus 1 is 12, 7 plus 1 is 15, so there it is, 2521. And you've got the problem because I'm doing the maths and we're not supposed to do it this way. We're not supposed to do it this way. It becomes incorrect to do that because I've actually double counted something.
Yeah. It's like double counting a day.
Yeah. So it becomes 2,520. I'm trying to avoid getting into the complexities of that. So that's how you get these 2520, because what you do in here is you've got 723 years, and then you've got 1,700.
But the year in the middle is actually the last one of that one and the first one of that one.
I'm just showing you why you add them together, because you get that distance and that one. And so to get all of it, you add it.
That's when it started. That was when Ashia.
So do all the numbers kind of feel a bit
I
better
know
now?
what I did now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Thank you. You guys are patient.
So
Repetition's good.
let's just finish this off. Or do we want to finish it off tomorrow? It's 26, it's quite late. I didn't realise it was so late. Should we finish it off tomorrow?
Keep going.
Yeah, you keep
I don't
going.
mind this.
I'll just go and have some water.
Do you want a small break?
Maybe a small break and keep going instead of question time. Or, I don't know. I'm just
Yeah, I haven't
throwing it
got any
out there.
questions.
I wouldn't be going.
I've got.
You've
We do
always
have
got
questions.
Little list.
Should we have a
Do
little
you
break?
have oh sorry, ask them. You wanted to ask them if they wanted to go. Do you have do you know of a good presentation on the daily with all those different
Definitions.
I've done one, but I don't know where it would be on my website. You have to check it out.
So that would give probably looking into it in that detail would give a really good good foundation for understanding the daily.
Yeah, yeah, no, it does.
Because I was just realising in Daniel 8, you know, you're saying that it starts with the Medes and Persians, that definition of the daily for Daniel 8. But then the answer to that question, part of that answer is 2,300 days, but the answer for the host is in verse 9, I think, and that's the 2520, which is the last end of the indignation.
19, verse 19.
Pardon?
Verse 19, yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought, you know, there's obviously a bit of a study around that, because on one hand you're saying Daniel 8's from the Medes and the Persians, description of the daily, but then when you go to the answer in verse 19, that's talking about the 2520.
Yes. But you can't separate the two. it takes a bit of juggling to get it round in your mind. But yeah, the last Leviticus nation is talking about 1844, which is the temple and sanctuary. Doesn't have any questions or over what we've spoken about. I know it's all a bit fast, and you might not know everything. But are there any questions that you're not too happy with or you're not familiar with?
That this is sidetrack a little bit, but that presentations of Jeff's when he's talking about the Pentecost, the 7 weeks up in Leviticus 25 is what I'm trying to say. He talks about Leviticus 25 and how it's the year-day principle along with the Sabbath, and Leviticus 26. You've got that year-day principle happening, and he shows I haven't looked at it for a long time, so I can't quite, but he adds all the 49 those periods up and all the 50s up to the 50-year mark, and then he adds it all up and it comes to 2520. Yeah. So I just found that astounding. I loved that, but I just thought that to me is what really made the 2520 click, more than Leviticus 26. The 7, how it's got the 4 sevens, the 7 times, 4 times. Yeah, I just wanted to I don't know, I noticed that when people teach this, they don't often mention that side of it. But for me, that's what really made it just click. It sort of brought the big jigsaw puzzle together. I don't know if you really know what I'm talking about, because I can't remember it to be, clear in what I'm trying to say.
I've got a feeling it's not the 2520.
Pardon?
I've got a feeling it's not the 2520. I've got a feeling it's the 2450.
No, that's part of it, but there's also the 2520. I'll go home and get my notes and I'll show you.
Yeah, I don't because I'm not familiar with that. Do you know that?
Not really roughly. I could tell you from where it goes and that it's based upon the Jubilee cycles, but I think she was talking about adding up the 7-year cycles up to the 490 years. The 70 years.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I can't remember, but
it has nothing to do with the 2450.
It's Leviticus 25.
Yeah.
And it may be that, and it does come to 2520. I just found it really good. Yeah.
Bring your notes tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll have a look.
Okay.
Because from the way you're describing it, I don't know that.
Yeah, it's probably the way I'm describing it.
Okay.
Another thing that I think about 2520 is that when we say we should have a second and third witness to it, if you rejected 2520, you don't have that. You only got Daniel 8:14 and that's it.
Yeah, so the question is about 1844. If you've got only the 2300-day prophecy, you only got one testimony. And we really know that we should have testimony of 2, and it would be here. This would be the testimony of 2 that you have to establish what should really be 1844, because we've just got a 4 here, and you've got these 2 testimonies, 2520 and 2300 days. And they're the ones that you... Yeah. Maybe we should just read this statement. I think Brother Patrick referred us to it, but I'm not sure he actually read... if he actually read the statement itself. So, this is Story of Redemption, page 356, paragraph 3.
Oh, that's the one that's also in
Did you read that one?
No,
I thought you just referred to it.
I referred to it, but it's in the notes.
Yeah, in your notes it's early writings.
Page 16.
Page 16. So let's just go to your notes, page 16. It's the second 16, not the first one. So in page 16.
I think there's the first sentence, isn't it?
Yeah. So we're in your notes. I'm just going to read something that isn't in your notes, just one sentence. Because in the story of redemption, it actually just identifies the person. To me, it was a bit clearer. It says, to William Miller and his co-labourers, it was given to preach the message in America, and the light kindled by their labours shone out to the distant land. It doesn't say that in your notes, because in the story of redemption quote, it's got a little bit extra. It's not in the early writings, but we're here in the early writings, 229. But there's a sentence above in the story of redemption one. Then it says, God sent his angel to move upon the heart of a farmer, that farmer is William Miller, who had not believed the Bible, to lead him to search the prophecies. Angels of God repeatedly visited that chosen one to guide his mind and to open to his understanding prophecies which had ever been dark to God's people. The commencement of the chain of truth was given to him, and he was led to search for link after link. So we're just going to stop there for a second. Let's rub some of this out. So what Ellen White's describing is two things. It says God sent his angel to move upon the heart of a farmer. So there's a singular angel, one angel, who deals with William Miller's heart. Brother Patrick always identified, you can show that that's Gabriel in its kind of literal sense. Then it says, angels of God repeatedly visited that chosen one to guide what? What does it say?
To guide his mind.
So there's the mind. So already, just in this statement, you've got the heart and mind of William Miller being addressed in this subject. And if we just turn to, if you go to the beginning of your book, keep to that page. And I want to pick up on page 6. This is page 6. It's the second block. It says the truth that you must settle into. Are we okay? Are we all there? Yep. Page 6. So it's page 6 at the front of the booklet, and it's the second block. It says the truth that you must settle into. It says, just as soon as God's people, the people of God, are sealed in their foreheads, it's not any seal or mark that can be seen, but a settling into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually. So the intellectual and spiritual settling in is what's being brought to view in this passage. Where would the intellectual bit be?
The mind.
So here's the intellect, and then the spiritual would be here.
Yeah.
So you can see that there's this recurring theme of an intellectual and a spiritual settling into this truth. And Ellen White's bringing forth this point on page 16. If you drop to page 16, not the first page 16, it's the second lot of 16. So we're back onto that one, where it says formalisation by a messenger. And just reiterating what we said, that God sent his angel to move upon the heart. Then it says, angels of God repeatedly visit that chosen one to guide his mind and to open to his understanding. So there's understanding and intellect all connected to the mind, and then there's the spiritual experience connected to the heart. And that's the important thing that we want to understand, that William Miller has both of these experiences. And out of these two, there's a sequence in which it must happen. You have 1 and 2. First you have an intellectual assent to the truth, and it affects your heart. And this is the most important. And Ellen White's going to tell us that this is the test of discipleship. If you want to know someone's a disciple of Christ, you don't ask them how much information they know. You ask them what they do with the information that they know. You don't ask them, but I mean, that's how you know what a disciple is. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. And sometimes we miss that point. It doesn't matter how much you know, there's no salvational value in and of itself.
Thief on the cross or whatever. He didn't know much, but he was very...
I don't know, he might have known a lot. I have no background about him. This person, for a start, he was a Jew, so he knew an awful lot. Probably knew more than the average Adventist. and I don't know what history he's got. We don't know much about him. So I tend not to assume anything about him because we don't know. But the point we want to see is that this is the name of a chapter from Steps of Christ. That's why I chose that title. Test of discipleship. And I'm bringing in this word test, remember, because this is probationary time. The way you're going to get tested is through a prophetic message which hits you in your brain intellectually, and you get a headache, and it's going to affect your heart. And that's what the test of discipleship is going to be. So when you begin to understand this, you see that Christ is coming to teach his people, but then he says, the test of discipleship is if you love one another. By this men shall know that you're my disciples, if you have love one for another. But all he's teaching them is prophecy all the way through. Even all the feeding, everything is parable after parable after parable. The feeding of the 5,000, all of it is parable teaching. It's not, I'm not saying he's not worried about hungry people, but it's not about hungry people. They could have gone home and fed themselves. You can do without food for a day. It's not the problem. He's trying to feed the masses. And in fact, he says, the poor you will have with you always. I didn't come to feed the poor people. I came to teach you some lessons. So coming back to our statement, angels of God repeatedly visited that chosen one to guide his mind and open to his understanding. Prophecies which had been dark to God's people. Since these prophecies have been dark, everybody can read. Everybody has read the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. They've been major works long before William Miller's ever been born. Everybody's heard of the scientist that I can't remember his name. Newton, yeah. Everybody's heard of Isaac Newton. Hundreds of years before William Miller's on the scene, he writes one of probably the best commentaries, at least of his generation, of the book of Daniel and Revelation. So you've got experts in the book of Daniel and Revelation. They actually say the prophecies were dark to God's people. So we have to understand what this darkness is talking about that she's dealing with. And then she's going to explain what was dark. The commencement of the chain of truth was given to him. So we're going to draw a chain. This is what a chain looks like. And this is our chain. It's 6 links, we'll make it 7. It's 7 links long. And it says, he was given the commencement. And the commencement means a start. So this is what William Miller's given. So he's given this the start date. And it's truth. So the thing we want to know, he's given the start, and all of this is truth. If it's truth, what must it be?
If it's truth, then
What must it be? Jesus says, I am.
Truth in the life.
So this must be Christ. So whatever he's learning here, he's learning about Christ.
Yeah.
Because this is truth that he's learning, and Jesus is the truth. So this is a story about Christ that he's learning. Chain of truth. So he's taught the beginning, and there's something more that he's taught. He says, and he was led on to search for link after link until he looked with wonder and admiration upon the word of God. So it's truth and it's Christ. What else is it, she says? It's the word of God. And it says that he goes on, not only understanding the start, the commencement, but it says link after link after link. So what he's doing is, this is all truth. He understands the beginning of the truth, and then he understands all the individual bits of truth as you go along. And he's calling this, or Ellen White's calling it links. A chain is only a finite length. So he understands the beginning, and he then understands all the links that go all the way to the very end. So if he understands all the links, he must understand the end as well, yeah? Yes, please.
someone wants to get some water.
He saw there a perfect chain of truth.
He was stuck in there.
that word which he had regarded as uninspired, now opened before his vision in its beauty and glory. He saw that one portion of Scripture explains another, and when one passage was close to his understanding, he found in another part of the Word that which explained it. So this is the line upon line methodology that's being discussed here. If you don't understand one portion, you go to another portion of Scripture. He regarded the sacred Word of God with joy and with the deepest respect and awe. So just from this paragraph, we've constructed this model here. He's learning about Christ through the Word. It's symbolised as a chain, and he's given the start, and he's understanding truth about all the individual links. So we read that. And I want to read another statement now. This isn't from Ellen White's writing. This is from William Miller's writing. And again, Brother Patrick referenced this. But I just want to change all of this into the imagery that we're used to. We've got the chain of truth, and it's the start and the end. If it's the start and the end, then you know that it has some kind of finite length to it. So there's this length that's connected or dealing with this thing. So I'm going to change it from a chain to a rope or a cord or a tape measure, and then we're going to represent these individual links just as these individual grey marks. So what Ellen White's describing here is this same symbology that we picked up from Isaiah 28, the judgment and righteousness, the line and the plummet. It's the same story, but just different symbology. Hopefully we can see that. And he's given this thing here, plus, thank you, he's given
Is that no good?
No, it looks pretty gross.
I thought I just got it out of the water tank.
I think there's another bottle down there.
I'll prepare it for some cream. I'm okay with that.
William, in the back of my car, there's a new big bottle of water straight out the front there. That little yellow blue cup.
So he's given the commencement, and he's given all the links along the way. He's given two things. If you know the beginning, and you can see that the chain is this long, what do you then know? The end. So you know the start and the end.
Well, didn't it say he was given the commencement date? It didn't say he was given the end.
No, it doesn't. But what it does say, it says the commencement of the chain of truth.
Yeah.
Now we have to ask ourselves, how long is a piece of string? But how long is the chain of truth? And the chain has got finite length to it.
Yeah.
Because you can see that over and over again. Because this chain of truth, remember, we're getting multiple symbols and we have to put line upon line. So this must be the story that you have to build a temple. And a tape measure or a temple is a finite length. So you know it has a finite length to it. It's not.
That looks better.
You know that it's not infinite. So if it's finite, then it has to have some length. That means if you know the beginning, you must know the end. You have to know that. And all you need to do is, if you know what this length is, and you know the start, then you know the end. And this is what was dark to God's people. They knew about how long the chain was. Everybody's known how long the chain is. But they didn't know the start. And if you don't know the start, the end is obscure. Plus, they weren't clear on all the links. He's giving two pieces of information only. The start and the links. With that, you can work out a lot of information. And that's what we're doing. We're working not only about the start of a prophecy, we're working all the individual links, because it's these links, and as they repeat, that are going to bring us into our own history. You know, we've done that. We've got 1798, and then we've got 1840, and we're going to drop these down, these links, and we're going to get 1989 and 9/11. It's because we understand the links. If you don't understand the links, you can't do that. And you need more than one link to begin to develop this argument. So William Miller says this about his own work. This it's not in your notes. This one isn't, I don't think. This is the coding for this is 1845. I better put this one down. 1845 WIM, William Miller, and it's William Miller's Apology and Defence, page 11. You can find this online or on the CD-ROM, or if you've got the app on your phone, it's all there. It's not difficult to see.
Which is the app?
Ellen White.
Oh, okay, he's in
I can
there.
show you later.
Do you have Android or
I got
iPad.
So there's people in the room who can sort this out for you.
Yeah, yes.
So this is the coding for it, and this is what he says. From a further study of the scriptures, he says William Miller's Apology and Defence.
Yes.
An apology isn't, you're not apologising. An apology is a robust defence. It's just another way of expressing defence.
Okay.
And you get Christian apologists, which is a kind of a different way of expressing someone who is a defender of the truth. So he's not apologising for anything.
No.
He says, from a further study of the scriptures, I concluded the following. 1. That the 7 times of Gentile supremacy must commence when the Jews cease to be an independent nation. So when did they cease to be an independent nation? It's right here. He's going to say that at the captivity of Manasseh, which the best chronologers assigned to BC 677. So he's going to say that he studied and he got 677 7 times. And he's going to say that the 2300 days commenced with the 70 weeks, which the best chronologers dated from the year BC 457. So we've got 457. And then the last thing he's going to say, that the 1335 days commencing with the taking away of the daily and the setting up of the abomination that makes it desolate, Daniel 12:11, which is what we discussed, should be dated from 508. So this is AD 508. So I'm just going to go back and see what we've just read. The 7 times the Gentile supremacy must commence. The 2300 days commence. The 1335 commence. So what's he talking about? He's talking about 3 time prophecies, and he's dealing with the commencement. And if you study his writings, these are really the only 3 things that he deals with when he deals with commencement. When he gets this term commencement or start, his focus is on these 3 time prophecies above everything else. He talks about a lot of things, but he says in explicit terms that he understands the commencement of these 3 things, and they all take him to a common point. And then the last thing he says, they will all terminate together about 1843. So what we want to do is, if we connect these 2 things together, Ellen White says that he's given the commencement of the chain of truth, and he says, I worked out the commencement of the chain of truth. He doesn't use the word chain of truth, obviously. And Ellen White says prophecies in the plural. So put in your notes. So it says in the thing, it says to open his understanding to prophecies in the plural. So there's more than one prophecy that he's given. So he hasn't got one chain, he's got multiple chains. And he's going to tell you how many chains he's dealing with. Because he's going to list it 3 prophecies, so there are 3 chains. And he's going to give you the commencement of each of the one of these 3. And Ellen White's going to say the same thing. He's given the commencement of the chain of truth, and he's given the links that deal with the progression of that chain of truth. He's going to tell you that he's got 3 time prophecies, and he's got the commencement from the best chronologers. So there are many chronologers, and he has to work out which is the right one. And Ellen White tells you how he does it. How did he do it? Angels were guiding his mind to make the right decision. So he doesn't make a wrong decision. And what are the 3 days? It's 677, 457 and 508. And that leads us back to this one here, 677, 457, which is the 2520, the 2300 days, and down here you've got 508, which is the 1335 time prophecy. So all of these three things, he's saying that he works out, and Ellen White, in her own way, is telling you that this is a true prophecy in this one and this one. So I can't remember who asked the question. I think one of my sisters said, well, where does Ellen White mention the 2520? So she mentioned it right here without even naming it. Because she's saying, he's got the commencement of truth of multiple prophecies, and he says, the prophecies that I worked out are these three. These are the three that I've given, that I've worked out that this is the start date, and these are the most three important prophecies that he's going to grapple with.
And you said that was truth, which is Christ, which is the word.
Yes.
So the 677 is the 2521.
677 is the 2520. It's right here. 677, 1844 is the 2520.
457 is the other one.
And 457 is the 2300 day prophecy. So we need to think about this because my sister said earlier, are we going to do something funny about the 2300 days? She didn't quite say it like that. She said, have we got something in store for us that we're going to reject 1844 because we have a misunderstanding of the 2300 days? So let's look at this. We've got 677, 457 and 508. 677 is what time prophecy? 2520. We've rejected that. 508 is dealing with the daily, and we've rejected that. And 457 is the 2300 days, and have we rejected that?
No.
Not yet.
Close.
But upon the testimony of two something is established, and we're going to mess that one up as well. 508. It says on this chart here, it says 508, the taking away of the daily, Daniel 12:11.
I haven't experienced this, but I've heard that they are questioning 1844. So that would take away the 20.
Yeah, it's been questioned for a long time, but now they're just becoming more open and vocal about it.
Yeah.
And we haven't dealt with Islam in here, but Islam has been rejected as well. If you've got these four truths, three of them have already been done away with already. They got progressively done away with, one after another.
You're writing books of a new order.
I'll give you the order. This was number 1, this was number 2, and this was number 3. And we're just waiting for the fourth one to come. They're going to repudiate their understanding of the 2300 days, 457, 1844. It's going to come down. So Ellen White says, but she's not going to use the language that the 2300 day is true, 508 in the daily is true, and the 2520 is true prophecy, because I don't know how else you're going to read those statements. So this is not the only place that you can go into her writings and address this issue, but she's saying this is true. The other easy way to do with this, if you go into her writing and see how she relates to these two charts. So she says that this chart, was directed by the hand of the Lord, and we shouldn't make any changes to it. There's only one mistake on this chart. It's this number insisted here. This should be 44, 44. That's what the problem on this chart is, purely and simply. And no other problem with the chart, because when they go to correct this chart, what you need to know is they began to do the correction work around the year 1846. Ellen White gets married in 1846. They begin to keep the Sabbath in 1846, and they begin to work on the second chart. God had to wait. He had to wait 2 years before they could begin working on it, because the whites weren't keeping Sabbath at that time. 1844, they've understood the issue of the sanctuary. They've already got that straight away. It's another 2 years to sort out the Sabbath. Once that's done, now they're going to start going back over this chart, and they're going to check every single piece of information on this chart, and they're going to correct all the mistakes here. If you do a detailed check on these two charts, there's no difference between them, except for 3 things. The first one is this 1843 gets changed to 1844. The second is that they add the issue of the Sabbath, which is in this information
so the
here.
Sabbath is in there.
Sabbath is in here.
Oh, okay.
And then the third piece of information is the sanctuary. So they're the three, one change and two additional pieces of information. Everything else is there. Their focus is different now. Their focus is different, and so the way that they lay out the chart is slightly different. They want to make the point about 1844. They want that to be the focal point. And so when you go all the way through, 677 isn't the big deal. They want us to highlight 457 to 1844, the 2300-day prophecy. But they've got the 2520 down here. They haven't repudiated against it. They've got 677. This is the 2520, and this is the 2300 days. You see the way they've constructed it? I did it this morning this way. I put the 2300 days and I put the 2520 this way. They've just put it the other way round, and they've done this 2520 to 2300 days, and they finished it here in 44, and they've got 457, 677. It's exactly the same diagram that I did, but I did it sideways and they've put it vertically. So you know that they've not rejected the 2520 between these two. This was produced in 42, this was produced in 50. So that's the other statement that we know. Ellen White says that there's a vision about this chart in the Bible, and she already agrees that there was a vision about this. This is the back of chapter 2. Back at chapter 2 says that there should be tables in the plural. So there are two tables of Habakkuk chapter 2, and there's no change of information in it. The only adjustment that they do is in this 1 year, and they put the Sabbath and the sanctuary in here. So that's our second testimony. So we've got two testimonies that Ellen White's not in any disagreement. Then you've got the many statements from James White that uphold the 2520. He upholds it in many statements. Then you've got the work of Hiram Edson. Hiram Edson was the person who was given the vision in the cornfield about the sanctuary. And in 1856, 6 years after that chart was produced, he does a number of studies, and he's the one who works out this one. He works out this study. This one here, 677 to 1844, this is Miller. Miller had worked this out, and this one is Hiram Edson. So you've got these two different people coming at these two 2520s. And James White is the editor of the magazine. He allows it to be printed. He doesn't object to it. So you see, right up to 1856, James White is full on board about the 2520. There's no repudiation of it. There's no rejection. Something happens in his experience later on. So there's a lot of information that Ellen White is giving us if you're willing to see the 2520 in her writings. But she doesn't use the word 2520 explicitly. She doesn't do that. Now, I can't tell you why she doesn't. I can speculate, I can guess. But we have to be careful when we deal with scripture. There's a saying that says, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know why she doesn't say it. So when people say, why doesn't she talk about it? How do I know why she doesn't? God told her not to. Who knows why? All we can know is what she speaks about. We can't know what she doesn't speak about. I can guess. And my guess is this, that the Lord has tucked up in his sleeve a test for us at the end of the world. And when he tests us, he's going to test us with something that Ellen White isn't going to explicitly talk about, because if she had, it wouldn't be a test.
Same with the daily. She doesn't say too much. She just said.
She doesn't say too much about the daily. Yes, she doesn't, but she does mention it. She does mention that the issue of the daily. Let me quickly.
I'm going to ask or remind you that the ladies asked to read that statement about the longest time prophecy.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, I was aboard.
Sorry.
It's the most that's the hardest one to
If you
deal
don't
with.
say it, somebody else will say
It
it.
makes
There's
sense
quite a
though.
few.
When you read it, it
It's
does
not
make
that
sense.
bad if the camera started.
That's right. Theodore.
It's even confirming it.
What was I going to say something.
Oh,
Oh, this is what I want to say. Yeah. Let me
I'll see if I can.
let me do this. Here's Millerite history, 1798, 40. The foundations are laid. F. The work of the enemies, and then April 44. and then October 44. This foundation that's laid, what is this foundation that's laid? Do you remember? The chart.
Yeah.
And they don't like the chart. What don't they like on the chart?
The specific.
Date
So,
setting.
yeah, 1843.
They
or
don't like-
1844, the date.
And not 80.
It's not 44, it doesn't say 44 on it,
No,
does it?
1843.
They don't like 1843. Okay, so that is what they're going to stumble over. And what's going to happen?
They shut their doors.
There's going to be a close of probation for them based upon that. They're going to fall
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's come down to our history. 1989, 9/11, 2005, and then we're going into history. So in our history, we don't have one chart. We have two charts. There are two charts, which is this chart, the 43 chart, and the 50 chart. And the argument that everybody's stumbling over when you address these charts is the subject of the 2520. So in this history, these people are warring against a message that's on this chart, and they're going to close their probation over it. And in our history, the thing that people object to mostly on this chart is the issue of the 2520. So we're saying that they're going to close their probation over this issue that's on this chart. And what Bible verse is this? It's not a Bible verse. It's not anything except 4 numbers. It's a 4-digit number. So if I were to say to you, you're going to lose your salvation over a number, who would agree with that? Most people say that's foolishness. But if we come to the end of the world and to Revelation 13, and I said, you're going to lose your salvation depending on what day number you're going to worship on, we'd all say, oh, we agree now. Yeah? Because it's either 1 or 7. If you get the number wrong, you're going to die. We can see that. As soon as you start putting the Sabbath into it, we say, oh, it's different now. But it's not different. It's exactly the same. So you lose your salvation over numbers. If you don't follow the right numbers, you die. So this is what happens to these people. They don't like the numbers, and they're going to close their probation over it. So this is a 4-digit number, and the 2520 is exactly the same dynamic. It's just a 4-digit number. Even if you don't understand anything about the 2520, just get 4 numbers, don't like those numbers, and you're going to close your probation. It's as simple as that. Reject the numbers, you close your probation on the wrong side. You reject the numbers, you're in trouble.
So 2005.
I didn't, like when I came into this message, I didn't study the 25-20 for a very, very long time. Probably the first 2 years, at least. But I knew it was right. What, sorry? No. I knew that it was right without even studying it. Because one of the first things that happened was when Emiliano was in this message, and the Sabbath school lesson was on Habakkuk 2, and he sent out an email to everybody, and he had all the quotes of Ellen White, and he encouraged everybody to present it to their Sabbath schools. And it was wonderful for me. I was so convicted. When I read all those quotes, it was just so convicting. I didn't have to go further than that. I knew that everything on those charts was correct. And there was a lot of other stuff I was studying. I didn't want to get bogged down in 25-20. At that stage, I didn't want to get bogged down in it. But, so, that's my testimony. Those quotes are so powerful about those charts.
I agree, but for me, the statement from early writings, that should be enough. Ellen White says he was given the commencement of multiple prophecies. And then he's going to tell you what the prophecies were. It's these 3 prophecies. So you know that 677 is a valid date. It's a prophetic date. Starts the commencement of a work that Christ is going to be doing, because it's the chain of truth. That should be enough. But then we go to the subject of the charts. We've dealt with that. Then you see this history. It's a rejection just of numbers, random numbers just put together, and people are going to die over it. And then we say, okay, let's go into the detail of history, and you see why they're going to die. You can see what the problem is. If you reject it, you're not going to be established. Do you want to say something?
2005.
No, you put 2005 there. Could you just reiterate what that was?
25. Oh, to 2005.
Yeah.
Oh, 2005 is the year that we came across this one.
Oh, okay.
This has been hidden away on a computer system somewhere in books for years and years and years. Obviously, theologians and scholars know about it, but someone on the message was doing some research, doing some study, found it, dug it up, thinking, we never heard about this before. And when they said we never heard about this before, nobody was even interested in this 2520. It wasn't an issue. 2520 wasn't really an issue before 2005. But once they start seeing this, and they see there's an argument now in that past history about these two, then it suddenly becomes interesting. The reason it becomes interesting is because the point that the person wants to make is 1798.
Yeah.
And as soon as you figure out 1798, we all know, way before 2005, that 1798 is the time of the end, is 1989.
Yeah.
And the point this brother makes, Hiram Edson, is these two 1260s. So as soon as you start doing that, and we've been teaching about this 3.5 times for a long time in this message, then you begin to see actually the 2520 has some significance, because now you have to start dealing with the daily, and the daily had already been addressed separately as a separate subject. So now you incorporate the daily into this subject. As soon as you start doing that, then you have to see what his problem is, because he says Miller is wrong. So now you have to go and investigate Miller, and you have to say who's right. Is it Edson or Miller? And he said he was wrong. And then we come to the conclusion, once this happens, is that both of them are correct, and it's this whole line of truth that I mentioned: the scattering, the gathering, single prophecy, two themes. And all of this is happening around 2005 when this is discovered. So that's why 2005 is an important day. We don't normally put it as a date, but that's when it happened.
Oh no, I was just going to say, when you were talking about that, the 4-digit number, and people are going to lose their salvation over that, there's a huge difference between people that are just ethically opposed to that and those who just can't see it. You know, like there's some people who take a little while to just gather the pieces in their minds, and but there's others that just don't want to see it. So to me, it's far more of an issue than just whether you accept a number or not a number. Yeah.
I agree with Sister Marie. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
But my first port of call is, why reject it? The Bible says, why would you die? And what the dangerous ground that we enter on into is we say, well, I see that, but I need to look at it more before I make a decision. And I'm saying that's wrong. It's wrong to say I need more time to make more decisions, to find out more information before I make a decision. We're supposed to make a decision on what makes sense today. And if that doesn't make sense, I'm not saying for you, but say to me, that doesn't make sense. But then I'm going to say, well, tell me what doesn't make sense. 4 digits and 4 digits is repeat and enlargement. History is repeating. What is it you don't see? And we are on dangerous ground if we say, I need more proof than this, because you don't need any more proof than this, unless you see there's some mistake or some error here. If you say, well, I don't agree that history is repeated, I say, okay, let's forget that. Let's deal with history repeating. Until you agree with me, history repeats. We've agreed on that. Now let's come back to this. And now what is your problem? Everything else beyond this is icing on the cake. It's a refinement. It's an intellectual and a spiritual ascent to the truth. This is just development. however you approach it, if you're going to approach it from this one, Ellen White says the multiple prophecies, or you take her statements on the chart, which way you go for it, at the beginning you need to accept truth. It's dangerous for you to say, well, I'll wait to make a decision when you give me more facts and figures. I don't believe that's how we're supposed to operate as Christians. If you've got a little bit of light, you walk in the light, and then what do you get? More light. You can't wait and say, well, I'll wait till I get enough light before I can see things. Because you have to go with what you know, and you won't grow otherwise.
When I discovered the 25-20, and then I went to find out if what I was looking at was real, because I'd never seen it before. Then I came to Jeff's presentations, and he mentioned those two charts. And on those two charts, he said God directed those two charts. And 25-20's on both of those charts, so that cemented it.
Yeah, that cemented it.
And that's exactly what Sister Marie, I think that's exactly what you're saying.
I'm the same
It was
on
just
the
quote.
daily. I'm the same on the daily.
Yeah.
You find these people fighting all around the daily, and there's huge arguments and la la la. I just go on page 74 on early writings, and she just says those who were all gathered together in the early, the pioneers, they had the correct view of the daily, and go like, where's that going from there?
So, the thing with that is, you take the position, you say, I know what I'm on the right side, then someone starts opening down your lane and starts challenging you, and you can't answer their questions. And that's fair enough, but we can't say that we're not going to make a decision until we understand all the facts. Sometimes it could take us 4 hours to show this and to demonstrate it. But after the 4 hours, you don't have any excuses. You can't say, well, explain a little bit more about the 25-20 before I make a decision. Because it's obvious, you can see it here, or on the chart, or on the early writing statement. Everything after that is just additional information. I'm pretty certain, between all of you, we've done the 25-20 over the last, 4 hours, and I'm sure everybody's learned something new. Because everybody knows a lot here, to varying degrees, but even then, there's still things that we don't know. If I was sitting with you and someone else was presenting, I would have learned something I didn't know. I'm not saying I know a lot, but what I'm saying is, there's still many things to learn. But all that additional learning is just, you think, I already believed it, but this just gets better and better. That's all that's happening. It's not like confirming you in your faith or establishing your faith, saying, oh, now I really believe, like I didn't believe before. You have to believe at the early stages. You can't wait till you get this level of detail before you're going to commit. You cannot do that.
But, what about the heart and the mind? You know, sometimes you might be able to assimilate something at an intellectual level, but then really what you want is you want to go away and you want to study that and receive it, one-to-one with the Lord, in communion with the Lord. That's what you're inspired. That's what you're trying to inspire us to do, isn't it?
Yes. My job is only to deal with those people at an intellectual level, because I'm not the Holy Spirit. All I can do is give you intellectual information and go away, cross my fingers and hope you're going to do something with it, which means not... Yeah, of course. Yes. I know. I do that to get a response, and then I know you think, what I'm hoping is, I already know that you understand it intellectually. Now what my hope is, it's going to do something in your life, but I can't get involved in that. I can encourage, I can pray, I can do what, but I can't get involved in this history here of the heart, because it's an individual basis. My job is to give you the mind bit, and we can argue, we can fight, we can reason together, we can wrestle with the scriptures, but all I can ever do is do mind with mind.
You sound so like Paul. Remember when he was there before
on Mars Hill? Oh, yes.
But, to give Ellen White credit and William Miller, they both needed time, before they actually went out. And so you've got to allow that time for all of us to be able to let the Holy Spirit lead us into all truth. So what you presented is great, and so we need time. So you can't say that it's going to be in your time. but it'll definitely be a walk with the Holy Spirit that we're going to be able to have.
And that's the whole point. As a teacher, all you're allowed to do is give people information.
Yeah.
You can't control what people are doing with that information. It's not our responsibility.
And I think when they go home and they read those quotes quietly on their own, the truth sinks in. Yeah.
And you get this sensory overload at this time of the day.
I hope this doesn't sound like I'm disagreeing with you, because I'm not.
Yeah.
But then I could show you intellectual quotes that tell you you don't have time to go and process this information. I can show you quote and intellectually, at an intellectual level, I'm saying when I give you the information, straight away you've got to do something with it. Straight away you've got to share with it. You don't even have time to process it. When you hear it, you have to do something straight away.
We've already got a plan in place.
This is not a one-to-one discussion. This is genuine. I'm talking to a camera. I'm talking to everybody. But what I'm saying is, intellectually, we don't even have time to sit and process. If you learn something, we're supposed to pick up the phone and say, do you know about 2520? And get burnt and get into trouble with it, without saying, let me have a think about this first. Now, obviously in reality, what I mean straight away, I hope you understand the point. You've got to go make sure that this is true. Because I could have tricked you and deceived you into something. You've got to make sure that this is true. We haven't gone through many of the quotes.
That's the one.
This week is to whet your appetite on issues that you perhaps haven't heard about before, and you can't be expected to go away and say, this is the truth, I'm going to stake my life on it. But you need to go and check for yourself. So that is what you're saying, and that's where I agree with you. But once you say, that is rock solid, I've got that, then you're in trouble. Because then you've been hooked. Now you're in the movement, and now you've got to do something with it. And you can't wait till you can do this. This is anybody. You can't wait till we know the details. You've got to share what you know.
When we first came into the message, I remember going to church and the lady that she's against this message, she found out that I was in it. She dragged me around the back of the church and she took me around to some other ladies and she said, tell them what you know, they want to know. And so I had an audience, and I had only just watched a couple of presentations on the Millerites. So I straight away just started sharing what I knew, which wasn't much, but I remember being amazed at what came out of my mouth, So God just set up that appointment. And straight away I was sharing what I knew. So.
Just amazing. And that is true. Plus, the Holy Spirit, knows how much time you need and what the opportunities are, but if you don't actually exercise it, then you can't really work. Because isn't it, as Jeff said, it's as you share it that you actually start to understand it better.
No, I don't think Elder Jeff said that. I think Zachariah said that.
Oh, well, there you go. But then
So
maybe
he
Jeff
stole it.
repeats.
He stole it from Zachariah. Yeah. Yeah. That's what he said. But he got it.
But he got it from somewhere.
He got it
Well,
from
He didn't
Zachariah.
make it up.
let's face it, well, they say the New Testament 70%, Old Testament. So
Yes.
But it was almost like, like God does things. He sets up appointments for us. And I think what he's doing is he's is this the correct word? Solidifying it in our own experience by bringing us to other people, so that we have to basically testify.
Well, it reinforces it in your mind if you share it, doesn't it? Really?
And it gives you a tough forehead.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, true.
So you can headbutt people
Yeah.
effectively. It's 8 o'clock.
it was a good half hour.
Yeah.
Call it a day?
Yeah. Let's call it quits.